Chapter 376. After walking for a few thousand meters, Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xuanji heard the sound of flowing river water. They flew out of the cave and landed on the ground. This was a spacious underground space, and there were all kinds of crystals embedded in the walls. There were also man-made oil lamps that lit up this space. In front of them there was a river that was 15 meters wide. The river water was very rapid, and it flowed from the darkness to the darkness on the other side. Looking closely, one would find that the river water was quite strange. It seemed like a dense fog, but the sound of flowing water did not seem fake. "Is this Fate Emperor River?" Zhou Xuanji asked out of curiosity. The spirit chi here was very dense, and it was not inferior to the peak of Skyfall. Founding Emperor Qi Wei sighed in amazement and said, "It's the first time I've seen Fate Emperor River. It's said that Fate Emperor River flows in a cycle and only exists on this path." He paused before saying, "If you want to become a great emperor, you have to jump into Fate Emperor River. However, if your body is weak, you will be crushed by the flow of fate. Are you confident?" Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Doesn't becoming a great emperor require the acknowledgement of the heavenly law?" He was confident that he was strong enough, but he did not know much about Fate Emperor River, so he did not dare to act recklessly. "Indeed, but you can prove your Tao with power." At that moment, a familiar female voice sounded out, and Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua looked over. A ball of demonic qi flew out from the cave, and after it dissipated, Xian Xianghua, who was dressed in a bewitching purple dress, walked over slowly. A ball of demonic qi flew out from the cave, and after the demonic qi dissipated, Xian Xianghua, who was dressed in a bewitching purple dress, walked over slowly. "Why are you here?" Zhou Xuanji asked out of curiosity. After 13 years, this old demonic woman was still as flirtatious as ever, and her aura was evidently more powerful. He felt that she was not any weaker than Shi Shenzong. It seemed that while he was not around, Long Aohua had not rested at all. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's expression slightly changed, and a look of wariness appeared in his eyes. "Xian Xianghua. She was once the top cultivator in the world, and she was undoubtedly the top cultivator in the demonic path. How could he not have seen her before? Of course it's for Fate Emperor River." After that, she looked at Founding Emperor Qi Wei and teased, "Ho, little old man, you're not dead yet." Founding Emperor Qi Wei felt quite awkward and did not know what to say. Back then he had also been defeated by Xian Xianghua. Before Yang Di had appeared, Xian Xianghua had been invincible in the world. Her strength, personality, and faction were all in line with Long Aoyan's character, so Zhou Xuanji often called her Long Aohua. Back to the main topic, after the Heavenly Palace descended, I guessed that they would target Fate Emperor River, so I came to take a look. "You've come at the right time. With your strength you can definitely enter the river. As long as you become a great emperor, Spirit Sovereign Yen won't be able to do anything to you." Not only was this man in front of her the one she loved, but he was also her pride. He was less than 100 years old, but he had already surpassed the strength of a seventh tribulation scattered immortal. Even Yang Di was inferior to him. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Do you want to go down too?" Xian Xianghua shook her head and said, "If you didn't come, I would naturally go down and risk it all. But since you came, I will protect you. Moreover, your chances of success are greater than mine. You can help me after you become a martial emperor." Zhou Xuanji looked at her and said seriously, "Don't try to trick me. There can only be one great emperor in an era. If there were two great emperors, there would definitely be a battle. The two could not coexist." Xian Xianghua lifted up his chin and smiled as she asked, "How about you protect me in the future?" Zhou Xuanji fell silent. Ever since the two of them had met, it had always been Xian Xianghua who had protected him. Even though he had become powerful and had become the second or first in the world, he had never protected her. She was still so proud and aloof, roaming the world alone. Whenever something happened to him, she would always rush over immediately. If she had any fortuitous encounters, she would immediately inform Zhou Xuanji. This kindness was very great, and it made his heart feel heavy. "You should go down, you're about to ascend after all," Zhou Xuanji said as he sighed. Zhou Xuanji sighed. The thought of Xian Xianghua ascending made him feel a little sad. He did not know how long it would be before they met again. Xian Xianghua pushed him and smiled as she said, "If I become a great emperor and ascend, it will be even more troublesome. Don't waste time. After you become a great emperor, you can protect me after you ascend. If you don't become a great emperor and ascend, it will be difficult for you when you reach the upper realm." After saying this, she pushed Zhou Xuanji, wanting to push him into the river. He could not dissuade her, so he could only jump into Fate Emperor River. Founding Emperor Qi Wei, who had been eating dog food the entire time, sighed and said, Who would have thought that sect Lord Xian would have such a passionate side? If he was Xian Xianghua, how could he give this opportunity to the person he loved? He did not have the confidence. Xian Xianghua glanced at him condescendingly and said, I can become a great emperor without Fate Emperor River. What do you know? Founding Emperor Qi Wei chuckled. After entering Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji's vision became hazy and he could not see anything around him. He could not sweep out with his divine sense either, and a terrifying impact continuously swept through his body. He immediately activated Golden Invincible Form, and heavenly lightning wrapped around his body to defend against the impact of fate. Is this what luck is? It's formless and colorless, and when gathered together, it has such an impact. He felt inwardly shocked and immediately activated the World Buddha art. He did not know how to use Fate Emperor River to become a great emperor. No one else knew either. Those who knew had long since ascended and did not leave behind any specific methods. Soon he found that under the impact of fate, his body was gradually becoming stronger. This feeling, he suddenly thought of World Overlord. Perhaps he could use this opportunity to cultivate World Overlord. He sat cross-legged in Fate Emperor River and focused on cultivating. On a tall mountain at the border of Sun Hill, Dao Seeker stood before a cliff and looked in the direction of Fate Emperor River with a complicated expression. He mumbled, It's too early. This path is not as beautiful as people think. A black shadow came out from his shoulder and turned into a horrified face. It laughed sinisterly and said, You must have miscalculated. Who would have thought that he would reach fourth tribulation scattered immortal cultivation so quickly, and his strength even surpasses seventh tribulation scattered immortals? Who would have thought that he would enter Fate Emperor River so early? Dao Seeker sighed and did not reply. Everything was fate, but it was also a variable. The human race is about to collapse, and he alone will not be enough to turn the situation around. After entering Fate Emperor River, it is extremely difficult to become a great emperor. Most geniuses have died at the bottom of the river. Even if he succeeds, he will not be able to save the human race. You need to find another way, the Black Shadow said faintly. The Black Shadow said faintly. Dao Seeker understood this. But what other way was there? A few days after Zhou Xuanji entered Fate Emperor River, a piece of news spread across the world. The Heavenly Guards captured 10,000 people from each of the sanctums and empires. They claimed that they would capture people every month and bring them to the Ice Palace to be executed. They claimed that everyone on the kill list would be killed. Once this news spread, the world was shocked. They captured 150,000 people every month, and 1 million people would die in a year. As time passed, Spirit Sovereign Yin would become more and more impatient and more people would die. But those who were being hunted down by the Heavenly Guards were all powerful. Who would be willing to accept their fate? Soon, the northern wilderness region was in complete chaos. Update at night. We are ranked 25, which is not enough. If the event ends and we are in the top 10, I will update at least 10 more chapters. If you participate in this activity, you can also get book coins and other prizes. Everyone come to QQ to participate. On the Discover page in the upper right corner of the Receive Benefits section, you can find the activity Online Literature True Love Battle. Recommendation votes, monthly votes, gifts, subscriptions and shares can all help. Chapter 377. On the 5th day after the Heavenly Guard's word spread, the leaders of the 7 great dynasties and the 8 sacred grounds gathered together to discuss the matter of the Heavenly Hall. They were in a great hall of the Tsanghai Ziggurat. The Tsanghai Ziggurat was a neutral sacred land and rarely participated in battles. Its reputation was also the most reassuring. Yang Xindi knocked on the table with his finger and spoke first. The Sky Palace's plan is to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only is it justifiable to kill, but it also creates a gap between us and the top experts of the world. Once the Sword Emperor and Xian Xianghua are dead, even if the human race survives, we will be at death's door and forever be slaves. What he meant was very simple. He could not allow the Heavenly Palace to do whatever they wanted. Zheng Junlu added, That's right. We should join forces with the Sword the Arch and the others to counterattack the Heavenly Palace. The other leaders had similar opinions. Zhou Xuanji had saved the human race more than once. How could they sacrifice him? Furthermore, if he died, the human race would lose their strongest fighting force. Sunlight Emperor sat in the corner and said nothing. He was now the Hunyuan Emperor and also the strongest person present. Hearing others boast about Zhou Xuanji, he felt a little displeased. He was number 1 in the world. However, he wasn't angry. He knew who his enemy was. I think we need to contact the outer seas. The human race should be united. Lin Yu said. As soon as he said this, everyone fell silent. Overseas. Until today, the various factions could already feel how powerful the overseas region was. However, they did not point it out and were still immersed in the illusion that the northern wilderness region was the most powerful. Now that Liu mentioned overseas, they felt even more pressured. Sun Tomb within Fate Emperor River. Vast amounts of spirit qi rose up from the bottom of Fate Emperor River and flowed into Zhou Xuanji's body, making him feel delighted. He could clearly feel his cultivation rapidly increasing. This feeling was indescribable. At the same time, his understanding of the world overlord became less and less. Fate Emperor River was the materialization of the heaven and earth's fate, and the spiritual qi it absorbed came from the depths of the ground. It was the purest spiritual qi. The profundity of being the overlord of the world was to draw upon the power of heaven and earth to become the overlord of the world. It was similar to the current situation. Dong, 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 his heartbeat suddenly sounded out. It was powerful, and even Fate Emperor River could not drown it out. On the riverside, Xian Xianghua and Founding Emperor Qi Wei heard it as well. Just how strong is his physical body? Founding Emperor Qi Wei was speechless. This was the first time he had heard such a terrifying heartbeat. It was like a primordial demon that had lived for countless years. Xian Xianghua fell into deep thought. This kind of heartbeat was clearly not achieved through cultivation. It seemed like this kid was not simple and had many secrets. Or perhaps it was the effect of the world Buddha art. No matter what, she was still very happy. She liked how unfathomable Zhou Xuanji was. If she could see through him, what else could she look forward to? Time continued to pass. 10 days had passed since Zhou Xuanji entered Fate Emperor River. However, he still had no idea how far he was from becoming a martial emperor. He could only try his best to become stronger. As for whether he could become a martial monarch or not, it all depended on the will of the heavens. The abnormality of Fate Emperor River attracted the attention of many people who were proficient in divination. There were many lackeys of Sunlight Emperor in the Sun Tomb. Not only did the news spread to Sunlight Emperor, but it also spread to the whole world. In less than half a month, the entire world knew that Zhou Xuanji had become a great emperor in Fate Emperor River. Back when Sunlight Emperor had just discovered Fate Emperor River, the various factions had already scouted out the whereabouts of Fate Emperor River. However, they were not strong enough, so they could only look at the mountain of gold. Even with the Heavenly Hall's evil deeds, the conflicts within the human race did not stop. Those in power in the dark could not obtain Fate Emperor River, so they could only use other methods. For a time the human race was shaken. Achieving the martial monarch realm? The Sword Emperor has already reached such a height? Even the strongest human cultivator fell under his feet. Why can't he become a martial monarch? Our ancestors said that our era is far from the past, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. That's right. Zhou Xuanji will surely shock history. If he succeeded in becoming a martial emperor, wouldn't he be able to expel the Heavenly Hall? Who leaked the news? What evil intentions? To most mortals, Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor was not a bad thing because becoming a great emperor was too far away for them. This was especially so in the current situation. They all hoped that Zhou Xuanji could defeat Spirit Sovereign Yan. The world was in turmoil and the future of the human race was even harder to predict. The news soon reached Spirit Sovereign Yan's ears. After hearing that Zhou Xuanji wanted to become a great emperor, Spirit Sovereign Yan's first reaction was disdain. He overestimates himself. In this era, no one can become a great emperor because the human race's bloodline is impure. It's impossible for anyone to become a great emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yan sat on his throne and laughed condescendingly. The heavenly guards in the palace also laughed condescendingly. He immediately ordered the 30 heavenly guards to act. They were not to stop Zhou Xuanji but to kill the other people on the hunting list. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji would definitely die. Once he entered Fate Emperor River, he would not be able to come out alive. However, the other powerful cultivators of the human race did not know about this, and they might try to stop Zhou Xuanji, wanting to monopolize the potential to become a great emperor. This was a good opportunity for him to capture them all at once. After the 30 heavenly guards set off, Spirit Sovereign Yan got up and smiled as he said, "It's time to visit an old friend." After saying this, he disappeared. The remaining heavenly guards looked at each other before leaving. A world-shaking battle was brewing. 1 month later, Xian Xianghua and Founding Emperor Qi Wei's expressions became unsightly. "Fortunately, I cast a spell, or else it would have been troublesome," Founding Emperor Qi Wei said as he sighed. After Zhou Xuanji entered the river, he had killed everyone in Sun Hill, but he had never thought that the news would still be leaked. Xian Xianghua frowned and said, We can't go on like this. They will soon discover this place, and we're not sure if we can be disturbed during the process of becoming a great emperor. You need to be prepared to fight to the death." Hearing this, founding Emperor Qi Wei's expression became unsightly. Now, they not only had to face the heroes of the world, but they also had to be wary of the heavenly hall. The pressure was so great that he almost could not breathe. The longer one lived, the more one feared death. Founding Emperor Qi Wei suddenly felt some regret. However, thinking about the old ancestor's words in his dreams, his expression became resolute. "I'll send a message to the Qi Wei Empire and ask for reinforcements," founding Emperor Qi Wei said as he gritted his teeth. If Zhou Xuanji failed to become a great emperor, the human race would definitely perish. Rather than waiting for death, it was better to fight to the death. Xian Xianghua nodded and cast a spell to send the message. At that moment, within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji felt unprecedented pain. He felt as if he was in a pot of boiling oil and his body was boiling hot. However, his body was unharmed, which was incredibly strange. So uncomfortable, Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth. He understood that the true difficulty was coming. As long as he could master World Overlord, he would not fear Spirit Sovereign Yen. If he could become a great emperor, he would not have to fear him. If it wasn't for the Violet Demon Monarch's heart, I might already be dead. Zhou Xuanji felt quite shocked in his heart. He could sense that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was endlessly sending out energy, nourishing his muscles and bones. Even his body could not withstand the impact of Fate Emperor River. If it was anyone else, they would have died without a doubt. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 378. After rejoicing in his heart, Zhou Xuanji began paying attention to the Violet Demon Monarch's heart in his body. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart had already fused with his heart, and there was no distinction between them. However, all this while, he had been unable to see through the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. At this moment, the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was actually absorbing the fate within Fate Emperor River. It was truly mystical. Where did it come from? What is the origin of the Violet Demon Palace? Zhou Xuanji felt quite curious and wanted to take out the ancient god sword to ask the ancient powerhouses. But he could not take out the divine sword because the sword spirit had stopped him. According to what the sword spirit had said, if all swords were refined by the heaven and earth fate, then Zhou Xuanji would forever be under the control of the heavenly law. For now, being acknowledged by the heavenly law had only benefits and no disadvantages. But one day it would become a disadvantage. Because his goal was to surpass the heavenly Tao. Zhou Xuanji could not figure it out, so he stopped thinking about it. He allowed the Violet Demon Monarch's heart to absorb fate while he continued to cultivate World Overlord. He was already very close to becoming a fifth tribulation bodiless immortal. The spiritual energy from the ground surged wildly into his body. With the help of the Qianxia map, his cultivation level skyrocketed. If he stayed like this for a year, even if he could not achieve the martial monarch realm, he would be reborn. 3 days later. It was his 74th birthday. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 74 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Amethyst Chaos Breath Sword, Intimidating Spirit, Diamond Heart Suppressing Sword, Gold, Evil Yellow Sword. Then the information of the 3 swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Myriad Chaotic Breath Sword Grade. Amethyst description, the best of the wind sword. It is known for its fierceness and sharpness, capable of tearing everything apart. Sword name, Diamond Heart Suppressing Sword Grade. Intimidating Spirit, description, the sword of the Vajra God. It can calm the soul and give people unparalleled faith. Sword name, Evil Yellow Sword Level, Gold description. Legend has it that there are 7 colored divine swords in the evil abyss. Each color represents a type of desire, and yellow represents hope. If all 7 divine swords are gathered, they will merge into an ancient demonic sword. After obtaining another Intimidating Spirit legendary sword, Zhou Xuanji felt quite good. He was interested in the evil yellow sword. At the moment he already had the evil purple sword, the evil yellow sword, the evil green sword, and the evil crimson sword. He was only 3 colors away from fusing the mysterious ancient demon sword. He wondered how powerful it would be. The 7 swords were only gold ranked, so there was little hope of them surpassing Intimidating Spirit. However, he was still looking forward to it. What if there was a surprise? After that, he discarded all distracting thoughts and continued to concentrate on his cultivation. At the same time, Sun Hill was filled with people. Countless people were searching for Fate Emperor River. Standing at the top of the mountain, One could see traces of cultivators and demons everywhere within a 500-kilometer radius. From time to time, battles would break out. Fate Emperor River was thousands of meters underground, and ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to find it. However, there were also quite a number of experts who sneaked underground and searched everywhere. Kacha. Xian Xianghua twisted another person's neck, destroyed his soul, and threw his corpse to the side. Dozens of corpses were piled up on the side like a mass grave. Founding Emperor Qi Wei gritted his teeth and said, "If this goes on, we will become more and more passive." Xian Xianghua did not reply. She had already done what she had to do. Now she could only defend to the death. Founding Emperor Qi Wei said cautiously, "Should I go up and purposely create fake news to lure people away?" Xian Xianghua glanced at him and lightly nodded. He immediately felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders and he dove into the mountain. Soon he left the ground and flew above the forest. When he looked around he could not help but feel quite shocked. He had guessed that there would be many people coming, but he had never thought that there would be so many. Do they all want to die? Instead of dealing with the heavenly hall, they only know how to fight amongst themselves. Founding Emperor Qi Wei cursed inwardly, but he could understand what they were thinking. If he was 5,000 years younger, he would most likely be like these people and go crazy for becoming a great emperor. After all, there were many ancient records stating that anyone who entered Fate Emperor River could become a great emperor. Even though it was not true, it was enough to make people go crazy. He immediately flew into the air and circulated his magic energy as he shouted, "I've found Zhou Xuanji in Fate Emperor River. Hurry and come with me. Fate Emperor River is about to run dry." His voice was like thunder, causing countless humans and demons to turn around. Even the 30 heavenly guards hiding in the forest turned around. Founding Emperor Qi Wei turned and flew away, and seeing this, the others did not have time to think and hurriedly followed. Fate Emperor River is about to run dry? That fellow looks so familiar. Isn't he the founding ancestor of the Qi Wei Empire? He's indeed still alive. Fudge. Zhou Xuanji absorbed it so quickly? Commotion filled the heavens and earth, and founding Emperor Qi Wei looked incredibly worried. His eyes were filled with drama, and it was difficult to tell what was real and what was fake. Countless cultivators and demons majestically flew away with founding Emperor Qi Wei, but there were still a few people searching in this region. In the distance, on a cliff, Feng Qiu, who had lost his left arm, looked at this scene and could not help but gulp. Baihao Yisan stood by his side and shook his head as he sighed and said, "This is too crazy. Everyone in the world is an idiot and Zhou Xuanji is also an idiot." Feng Qiu asked in confusion, "Why?" There was a hint of bitterness in his eyes. He felt that he would be conned to death by Baihao Yisan. Fudge. Every time this bastard would confidently say that he was invincible, and then he would be beaten like a dog. Every time he would self-destruct, and this time he had even lost an arm, making him feel quite resentful. 20,000 years ago, there was a ferocious person who stole the human race's fate and became the sole emperor. This caused his descendants to bear karma and their bloodlines to become impure. They will never be acknowledged by heavenly law and will never be able to become a great emperor. Baihao Yisan said faintly before pausing and sighing, "In actuality, many geniuses have been born in the past 20,000 years, and they were not any weaker than the great emperors of the past. It's a pity that they were unable to fight against fate, and they all turned to dust and disappeared from the world." Feng Qiu frowned and asked, "Then how did the Hegemon Sword Emperor become a great emperor?" Baihao Yisan gave a mysterious smile and said, "You'll have to ask him." Feng Qiu almost coughed up blood. If he could ask him, why would he follow a scammer like you? He did his best to calm his emotions. Facing Baihao Yisan, no matter how much resentment he felt, he did not dare to show it. "That's right, who is that ferocious person you were talking about?" Feng Qiu asked out of curiosity. To be able to steal the human race's fate, he was definitely an incredible person. Baihao Yisan shook his head and did not reply. Feng Qiu almost jumped up and slapped him. At that moment, Baihao Yisan suddenly laughed and said, "This emperor has found Fate Emperor River." After saying this, his body blurred and he dived underground. Feng Qiu hurriedly followed. Underground. Xian Xianghua stood by the riverside and looked down at Fate Emperor River. She could not see Zhou Xuanji's figure, so she did not know how he was doing. She suddenly turned and slapped out with her palm. There was a loud bang. Baihao Yisan was blasted into a mountain by the palm wind, and Feng Qiu, who had just appeared, was given a big fright. "My invincible great emperor, are you going to kneel again?" He turned and looked over, and his pupils constricted as he said in a low voice, "Xian Xianghua, why are you here?" After asking this question, he wanted to slap himself. After spending so much time with Bai Hao Yisan, he had become stupid. This old demonic woman was definitely here to protect Zhou Xuanji. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 379. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Xian Xianghua's eyes were cold, and her words were filled with extreme killing intent. Feng Qiu hurriedly waved his hand and said, "We're not here to take Fate Emperor River." Bai Hao Yisan landed on the ground and dusted off his clothes as he looked at Xian Xianghua. He brushed aside the hair on his forehead and smiled as he said, "This beauty is quite powerful. Don't worry, we're here to stop Spirit Sovereign Yen. We're not interested in Fate Emperor River." Feng Qiu reminded in a low voice, "She's Zhou Xuanji's old lover." Hearing this, Bai Hao Yisan's face instantly became green. He felt disgusted. When he looked at Xian Xianghua again, he found her to be an eyesore. He harumphed coldly and said, "This emperor wants to ambush Spirit Sovereign Yen here, so I advise you not to obstruct me. Otherwise, this emperor will self-detonate and you will die along with that little slut in the river." Whenever Zhou Xuanji was mentioned, he became angry. At the same time, he inwardly cursed that such a perfect and powerful beauty had been taken by Zhou Xuanji. The heavens were so unfair. Xian Xianghua narrowed her eyes and said, "You are the great Emperor Heartless who has been defeated in every battle?" Bai Hao Yisan felt like his heart was being stabbed, and he almost coughed up blood. Defeat after defeat? He was instantly enraged and prepared to teach Xian Xianghua a lesson, but he was stopped by Feng Qiu. "Xian Xianghua, now is not the time to fight. Do you think that you alone can stop the people outside? Other than the people of the world, the 30 Great Tribulation bodiless immortals of the Heavenly Palace are also hiding." Feng Qiu said in a low voice, feeling quite good in his heart. Finally, there was someone who could rebuke this dog. Xian Xianghua asked, "How are you going to ambush us? Didn't you already lose to Spirit Sovereign Yen once?" Bai Hao Yisan was stabbed once again and his heart felt great pain. Feng Qiu glanced at him, feeling quite pleased inwardly, but on the surface he said seriously, "At least we injured Spirit Sovereign Yen. We plan to set up a barrier here, and once Spirit Sovereign Yen steps in, he will be trapped here for a short period of time." Xian Xianghua frowned. What kind of lousy idea was this? Bai Hao Yisan said unhappily, "Don't worry, he won't dare to enter Fate Emperor River, nor will he be able to destroy Fate Emperor River. As long as we can trap him here, this emperor will be able to self-detonate at close range. His soul will be destroyed, and even true gods will not be able to save him." Xian Xianghua asked, "Then how should we escape?" Hearing this, Feng Qiu's liver ached. He had already been injured twice and he didn't want to experience it again. Bai Hao Yisan said proudly, "That will depend on your own strength." Feng Qiu suddenly had a strong urge to rebel. Xian Xianghua did not agree and sank into hesitation. Bai Hao Yisan was not in a hurry. After all, Spirit Sovereign Yen had not come yet. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen and Dugu stood opposite each other in the valley. "What do you think? Isn't it good to have you become the Eternal Lord? This is your chance to turn things around." Spirit Sovereign Yen said, his tone filled with desire. Although the person in front of him was only a remnant soul, his strength had shocked the upper realm. Even the Lord of the Heavenly Palace coveted him. Dugu frowned and said, "What exactly do you want? I'm afraid the Heavenly Palace doesn't know about this?" Spirit Sovereign Yen nodded and raised the corners of his lips, revealing an unruly smile. "The Heavenly Palace has decayed. I'm powerful enough, but I can only be a Spirit Sovereign. My son has unparalleled talent, but because he offended the Heavenly Palace's crown prince, he was banished to the mortal realm." Although he spoke arrogantly, his gaze was fixed on Dugu. Dugu did not reply immediately and continued to frown, weighing the pros and cons. Spirit Sovereign Yen turned and looked at the sky as he said, "Devil Emperor Dugu, you are a rare genius in the mortal realm. You are not weaker than Lu Wuji and your death is regrettable. Are you really willing to leave this vast chessboard just like that?" Devil Emperor Dugu. The peerless genius from 50,000 years ago. Before he became a great emperor, he defeated Lu Wuji's body. Back then, Lu Wuji slaughtered countless living beings and absorbed countless essence chi. His cultivation surpassed seventh tribulation scattered immortal, but he was still defeated by him. Back then he was the current Zhou Xuanji. He was still in his prime and he was still invincible. After so many years, he was only left with a remnant soul in this forbidden ground, struggling at death's door. Wasn't this pitiful? Dugu remained silent. Spirit Sovereign Yen was not in a hurry and waited for him to make a decision. His target had never been Zhou Xuanji or Bai Hao Yisan. He wanted more and his desires were greater. Very well. Dugu said in a low voice. His eyes flashed and his demonic chi swayed. Spirit Sovereign Yen gave a smile and loudly laughed. Within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji did not know what was happening outside. He was completely focused on becoming world overlord. The power of the heavens and earth was his own power. The vastness of the heavens and earth was the vastness of the heart. The goodness of the heavens and earth was the goodness of the spirit. Zhou Xuanji entered a state of enlightenment, and the violet Tai Chi diagram on his forehead gave off a brilliant light. Boom. The spiritual energy surging from the ground suddenly exploded. He was breaking through. Not only was his cultivation breaking through, but his energy technique was also breaking through. The entire Fate Emperor River violently roiled, causing Xian Xianghua and the others to look over. How is this possible? Bai Hao Yisan's eyes widened as he cried out in shock. He's not dead yet? Feng Qiu frowned and could not help but hold his forehead. As expected, this dog had slapped his own face again. Xian Xianghua was not excited, but her eyes were filled with anticipation. She truly hoped that Zhou Xuanji could succeed in becoming a great emperor. Even though the two of them had never formally shared their feelings, she knew that he had her in his heart. They had a tacit understanding and their feelings were both in each other's hearts. Rumble. At that moment, the underground space violently trembled as if it was going to collapse. Bai Hao Yisan suddenly looked up and muttered, "Those bastards still found this place." Xian Xianghua frowned and demonic chi flowed out, forming a heavenly demon image, looking savage and terrifying. On land, within a mountain forest, founding Emperor Qi Wei was surrounded by 30 heavenly guards. His body was covered with blood and he breathed raggedly. There were people all around him and all of the cultivators and demons coldly watched on. They were densely packed, and they were like an inescapable net, surrounding him from above and below. Founding Emperor Qi Wei wiped away the blood at his mouth and said coldly, "The Heavenly Hall wants to destroy our human race, yet you're colluding with them for Fate Emperor River. Don't you find this laughable?" His voice was loud and clear, causing many cultivators' eyes to flicker. Who did not fear the Heavenly Hall? It was because they were afraid that they wanted to become a great emperor. Only when they were powerful would they feel safe. The Heavenly Guard in the lead was 15 meters tall and held 2 axes. He wore diamond-like armor and looked sharp and shiny. He looked at founding Emperor Qi Wei with his tiger-like eyes and said disdainfully, "Mortal, gods will not kill everyone in the world, they will only kill those who resist. You are someone who must die. Tell me where Fate Emperor River is, and I will let you die a quick death. Otherwise, I will rip out your soul and let you experience heavenly punishment." The other heavenly guards mocked him. A second tribulation scattered immortal dared to toy with them? Founding Emperor Qi Wei deeply breathed in, and his gaze became resolute. Underground. Within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji broke through to fifth tribulation scattered immortal. At the same time he comprehended the 5th level of the world Buddha art, world overlord. His magic energy greatly increased, and it turned from a small stream into a river into a river, and a river into a vast ocean. 2 consecutive updates, a new month asking for monthly votes. I want to give it my all and update more. Everyone please vote more to help me. Since the year before last I have been trying to qualify for the Great God Pact. I did not succeed the year before but I became one of the 12 heavenly kings. Last year because I did not want to leave the plot unfinished, I finished the most powerful mythical emperor and started a new book. With Emperor starting point I created an average of 20,000 votes. Investiture as a Xianxia was not a problem, but it was a pity that I ended it halfway. The new book was not as good as I expected, and the total number of votes for both was only around 6,000. I did not succeed in applying for the Great God Pact. Of course I did not want to give up but writing was the most important. This year I hope that I can get one. Currently the total number of votes for Legendary Sword starting point and creation point is almost 8,000. The book has only just begun, and we cannot remain silent. Just like how Zhou Xuanji was about to become a great emperor, everyone was helping each other. I will update, you will vote and we will work hard together. Cast more monthly votes to save the child. Come. Wonderful book house. Come. Chapter 380. World Overlord. Zhou Xuanji finally mastered it. In that instant he felt that his soul was being refined. His divine sense suddenly left his body and left Fate Emperor River. He saw Xian Xianghua, Bai Hao Yisan and Feng Qiu. His divine sense continued to soar, leaving the ground. He saw countless humans and demons gathered in the wilderness. He saw founding Emperor Qi Wei being surrounded and attacked by a group of heavenly guards like a dog being toyed with. Zhou Xuanji's divine sense leaped past them and saw majestic mountains and rivers. The land was quickly shrinking. He saw a boundless azure ocean. The clouds were layered and the sun and moon were beside him. The heavens and earth shrunk in his eyes until he reached the highest point in the sky and looked down at the entire world. Is this the stage of world overlord? Zhou Xuanji muttered to himself. He had the confidence to control everything. Perhaps this was how the immortal gods viewed the mortal realm. Apart from this, he could sense that there was a formless energy around him that could be controlled by him. He closed his eyes and began to comprehend. He ignored everything that he had seen before. His consciousness did not notice how dangerous his situation was, and he only took a quick glance. His mind was occupied by the vastness of the heavens and earth. The power of the heavens and earth was his power. At the same time, in Fate Emperor River, his body madly absorbed fate and spirit qi. The violet Tai Chi diagram on his forehead gave off waves of faint images, causing the entire Fate Emperor River to glow with a violet light. This is... Xian Xianghua's eyes widened in awe. Bai Hao Yisan was completely dumbfounded and mumbled, "Impossible? Impossible? Mortals who entered Fate Emperor River would die without a doubt. Unless Zhou Xuanji came from 20,000 years ago." Wait. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Thinking back to Zhou Xuanji's devilish deeds, he wondered if he really came from 20,000 years ago. From what he knew, no one was more devilish than Zhou Xuanji. He had reached fourth tribulation scattered immortal cultivation before he was 80 years old and could even kill Lu Wuji. Even the performance of the previous powerhouses at the same time paled in comparison to Zhou Xuanji. So it's like this? Bai Hao Yisan was covered in cold sweat and suddenly felt some lingering fear. Fortunately, he had not completely fallen out with Zhou Xuanji. Feng Qiu noticed the change in his expression and felt a wave of regret. If he knew this, he would have fought with Dao Seeker for Zhou Xuanji even if he had to risk his life. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The three of them each had their own thoughts as they stared at Fate Emperor River. A loud bang resounded. The cavern wall above them suddenly collapsed, startling the three of them and forcing them to take cover. The entire underground space crazily collapsed. The soil and rocks were squeezed against each other, moving to both sides and downwards. It was as if a world-destroying force was descending, compressing the earth. Fate Emperor River was battered by the mud and rocks, but it was not affected at all. Anything that got close to it would immediately turn into ashes. Looking up from the ground, one could see a heavenly guard with a pair of axes standing in the sky, looking down. The land within a radius of 100 miles had collapsed as if a hole had appeared in the ground, causing the soil and trees to sink. There were also many cultivators and monsters mixed in with the collapse. They screamed miserably, turning Sun Hill into a purgatory on earth. Not far away, founding Emperor Qi Wei, who had lost his arms and legs, was bound by iron chains. His entire body was dripping with blood, and he was being watched over by two heavenly guards. His eyes were filled with despair as he stared at the destructive power of the Twin Axe's heavenly sentinels. He was too strong. He was almost invincible. He sighed inwardly, "It's over. The human race is completely finished." In the distance, many cultivators and monsters were floating in the air. Their bodies stiffened as they looked at the scene in shock. What kind of power was this? They felt helpless. How could mortals like them resist such powerful heavenly guards? Fate Emperor River? They would not dare to snatch it even if they had 10 guts. Do you see this? This is the power of a god. You can only have a chance to live if you submit obediently. The Twin Axe's heavenly sentinel laughed maniacally. His name was Yang Lu, and he was Spirit Sovereign Yan's most powerful subordinate. He was an 8th tribulation scattered immortal. 8th tribulation scattered immortal. Even the most powerful human in the history of the northern wilderness region had never reached such a cultivation. Even Lu Wuji was only a 7th tribulation scattered immortal when he ascended. He was different from ordinary heavenly sentinels. He had a strong background in the upper realm, and because he worshipped Ji Xian, he became Spirit Sovereign Yan's subordinate. His ambition was the same as Spirit Sovereign Yan's, and he wanted to revive Ji Xian and see him return to the peak. He suddenly understood why so many powerful people chose to descend to the mortal world. This feeling of destroying the weak was simply too satisfying. His unbridled laughter covered the screams below. Soon, a horrifying crater that was thousands of meters deep and hundreds of miles wide appeared. Fate Emperor River also appeared at the bottom of the crater. It flowed out of the soil like a torrent of mist, and then disappeared into the soil in front of it. However, the soil on both sides did not feel wet at all. Yang Lu's gaze was fixed on Fate Emperor River, and his smile became disdainful. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's face was ashen. He did not see Xian Xianghua and thought that she had escaped. Your sword emperor is down there. Watch how I kill him. Yang Lu raised his battle axe and laughed loudly. No one responded. They were all trembling in fear and despair. Stop. At this moment, a domineering shout was heard. Everyone turned around and saw Jiang Wudi flying over from the east with a large group of Jiang clan disciples. Cultivator armies were also rushing over from other directions. There was the Great Zhou, Great Shang, Great Qin, Chiwei, Hunyuan, Donghan, and Bahan. There was the Dongyuan Monastery, Merciful Melody Cliff, Red Bank Valley, Songhai Ziggurat, Mountain Abyss Ziggurat, Ice River Valley, Deep Abyss Manor, and 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. There were also other factions with countless cultivators. 5 million? No. Could be more than 10 million. Most of the human forces in the northern wilderness region were gathered. All the cultivators stared at the heavenly guards furiously and wanted to tear them into pieces. A bunch of ants. Do you think you can win with numbers? Yang Lu laughed disdainfully. As he spoke, he swung his axe forcefully. The domineering axe chi descended like a crescent moon and blasted into Fate Emperor River. This scene made everyone's eyes red. Zhou Xuanji was their biggest hope. If he died, how could the human race fight against the heavenly hall? You're seeking death. Jiang Wudi charged at Yang Lu first, and the other powerful cultivators followed suit. They wanted to fight to the death with Yang Lu. At the same time, inside Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji's mind returned to his body. He felt that something bumped into him, but it did not hurt, so he did not care. After comprehending the power of the heavens and earth, his cultivation grew rapidly. In a short while he broke through to 6 tribulation scattered immortal. His magic energy grew tremendously, and his soul sublimated. Zhou Xuanji was immersed in it and could not extricate himself. The unprecedented power made him want to roar. But because he was in Fate Emperor River, he could not open his mouth. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? Right at this moment, a solemn voice suddenly exploded in his mind, jolting him awake in an instant. Who's speaking? He opened his eyes wide and thought in astonishment. 3rd chapter. One must have the right attitude to ask for monthly votes. During the double monthly vote period, one would need 1,000 monthly votes in one chapter. After the double monthly vote period, one would need 500 monthly votes in one chapter. It's different this time. It's not on the basis of the 3rd chapter, but on the basis of the 4th chapter. Is my attitude good? Vote quickly. After writing, I went to bed. Today is Labor Day and I will not be home during the day. I will update at night when I come back. Happy Labor Day. Come. Wonderful book house. Come. Chapter 381. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? That solemn voice came again. Zhou Xuanji could not find where he came from and he could not help but frown. This voice reminded him of Shenyuan Zhou. His tone was indifferent, yet it revealed a divine dignity. Even he couldn't help but feel reverence in his heart. Compared to Shenyuan Zhou, this voice sounded more like heaven. Perhaps he was heaven. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? This was the 3rd time he asked. Zhou Xuanji said in his heart, I want to. He didn't jump into Fate Emperor River to play around. Boom. A bolt from the blue suddenly sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. Next, a massive wave of memories flowed into his mind. His body trembled, causing Fate Emperor River to surge violently. The people outside did not notice the abnormality in Fate Emperor River, and they thought it was caused by Yang Lu's attack. At this moment, the world's strongest were besieging Yang Lu. Tens of millions of cultivators surrounded the 29 heavenly guards and unleashed all sorts of spells at them from all directions. Explosions rang out one after another, the wind blew the clouds away and the earth shook. This battle covered the heavens and the earth. It was a magnificent sight. The heavenly guards were powerful, but dozens of them died every second. Their corpses fell like rain. Blood flowed along the walls of the pit to the bottom, forming a river of blood. Founding Emperor Qi Wei lost his guard and fell to the ground, almost falling to his death. He laid at the bottom of the crater and tilted his head to look at Fate Emperor River. He suddenly realized that something was wrong with Fate Emperor River. This ripple lasted for a very long time, as if something was about to charge out of Fate Emperor River. Could it be? His heartbeat quickened, and his eyes revealed a look of anticipation. At this moment, Xian Xianghua appeared beside Fate Emperor River. She stood there proudly, her purple dress fluttering in the wind. She looked up at the invincible Yang Lu and frowned. Bai Hao Isin and Feng Qiu came to the edge of the crater and watched the battle from atop the trees. Feng Qiu gulped. Tens of millions of cultivators attacking a few dozen people. This was the first time he had seen such a scene. This group of dogs is really impressive. Bai Hao Isin crossed his arms as he coldly harumphed, his tone filled with disdain. Back then, no matter how many heavenly guards there were, they would all die when facing him. He didn't attack immediately. He was waiting for Spirit Sovereign Yen. Yang Lu waved his axes, and the flames spread out like a sea of fire, instantly burning 6 Mahayana cultivators to death. His flames were extraordinary, and a mortal's body couldn't withstand it at all. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Jiang Wudi. He raised his axe and swung it at him. In an instant, Jiang Wudi sensed fatal danger. He subconsciously turned his body, but his right arm was still chopped off. Your reaction is very fast. Unfortunately, you still have to die. Yang Lu smiled contemptuously. He turned around and kicked Jiang Wudi's chest, causing his body to fall into the sky. Too strong. Number 3 under heaven was completely powerless in front of him. The other peerless experts of the human race were shocked. How could they defeat Yang Lu? Looking at the surrounding battlefield, the other heavenly guards were like tigers that had entered a flock of sheep, mercilessly slaughtering without restraint. If things continued like this, the allied human forces would definitely be defeated. And everyone would die. Rumble, thunderclouds suddenly gathered. Yang Lu raised his right arm high, and countless bolts of lightning fell on his battle axe. It was as if many dragons were entangled in it, struggling crazily. Everyone around him was so scared that they all retreated. A terrifying pressure raged in the sky, and even the other people who were fighting stopped. The heavenly guards panicked and quickly moved away from Yang Lu. Their behavior made the human race even more panicked. Uneasiness, despair, and fear spread. Yang Lu's face was ferocious. Under the light of the lightning, he looked like an evil demon that could destroy the world. Mortals, do you want to see the true power of a god? Once my axe falls, all of you will die. He laughed wildly. Black clouds covered the sky, and he turned the world into purgatory. Hearing this, the cultivators all retreated. Even Li Yinyu, Shitan Changshe, and the others didn't dare to go near him. Damn it, Yang Xindi gritted his teeth. Yang Lu's power made him angry and afraid. He was in despair. Were mortals really powerless against the upper realm? Ah, go to hell. Continue to be afraid in hell. Yang Lu laughed maniacally. Just when he finished speaking, he swung his axe down. The apocalyptic lightning struck the ground, causing the entire sky to flicker with lightning. Everyone was engulfed by the lightning as though they were killed by the might of the heavens. Go. Bai Hao Isin quickly fled with Feng Qiu. Inside Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji was in a mysterious state. He couldn't sense anything in the outside world. Even though Fate Emperor River was rippling violently, he was not affected. After a long while, he opened his eyes slowly. A purple Tai Chi diagram appeared in each of his pupils, which looked demonic and mysterious. He frowned and waves of shock surged in his heart. The heavenly law told him the path to becoming a great emperor. He needed to defeat 10 powerful cultivators who were qualified to become a great emperor. But the more great emperor candidates he defeated, the more powerful he would be after becoming a great emperor. But how many great emperor candidates were there in the world? Yang Di was one. Did Spirit Sovereign Yen belong to the upper realm count? Bai Hao Isin had already become a great emperor, so he definitely counted. But even so, he couldn't gather 10. He was furious in his heart and felt that he was being played by the heavenly law. Anti-Sien. At this moment, a scream filled with sorrow and anger came from above, which shocked Zhou Xuanji so much that he looked up immediately. He recognized the owner of the voice immediately. Zhou Shaoxian. Thunderclouds billowed, causing the heavens and earth to fall into darkness. Countless corpses lay in the gigantic pit that spanned hundreds of miles. Even the forest ruins at the edge had corpses, and there were severed limbs and heads everywhere. Yang Lu was surrounded by lightning and looked down at the land like a thunder god. The 29 heavenly guards gathered around him and smiled condescendingly. Following their gaze, Xian Xianghua was half kneeling beside Fate Emperor River. She was covered in blood and her hair was a mess. Her purple dress was charred and her veil was gone. Her beautiful yet cold face was filled with a murderous aura. She stared at Yang Lu and the others. Other than anger, hatred, and murderous intent, there was no fear or despair. Far away, Daoya old man grabbed Zhou Xiaoshuan's arm so that she could not break free. Jiang Shui, Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Xiao Jinghong, and the others led hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples and flew into the sky. They quickly surrounded the 30 heavenly guards. Their hearts were heavy. Everywhere they looked, there were miserable corpses, and the thick smell of blood was so pungent. Yo, another group of insects that don't care about their lives. Yang Lu sneered. His tone was cold and he did not take Emperor Sword Court seriously at all. He lowered his head to look at Xian Xianghua, and the corners of his mouth curled up as he laughed arrogantly. B*Tch, I see that you are quite pretty. Why don't you become my house pet? As long as you become my dog, I will let you live. The other heavenly guards burst out laughing like demons from hell. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 382. Facing Yang Lu's savagery and brutality, Xian Xianghua did not surrender. She stood up slowly, and the demonic qi behind her condensed into a heavenly demon again. She looked around and the corpses of the dead made her a little dazed. Back then, the war between the righteous and demonic factions was as tragic as this. Back then she was fearless and mighty with her demonic might. She did not care about the pitiful people who died in the war. But now their positions were reversed. She became the weak one and she could not fight against the arrogant Yang Lu at all. She felt a little sad in her heart. The human race had been fighting among themselves for so many years, but they were still going to be defeated by their enemies. No, there was still hope. She suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji, and her eyes became determined. The heavenly demon behind her roared into the sky, which made the heavenly guards' mocking laughter even louder. This woman still wants to fight? The northern wilderness region is just SOSO. Let's just kill her. Can't we find a beauty? Ah, such a strong beauty is rare. I really don't know what she's thinking. She's overestimating herself. They ridiculed him wantonly, completely unaware of how cruel their actions were. Yang Lu raised his right arm and raised his axe again. He looked down at Xian Xianghua with disdain. Zevandi Xian. Zhou Shaoxian struggled with all her might. She was so anxious that she cried. When she was young, although Xian Xianghua only visited her twice, she treated her well and even taught her cultivation. She had always admired Xian Xianghua, the most powerful woman in the world, the former top cultivator in the world. The others looked terrible. But what should they do? Jiang Shui took out her staff and took a deep breath. She was ready to fight. She knew that her cultivation was not high enough, but Zhou Xuanji owed Xian Xianghua too much. Not only that, Xian Xianghua even taught her the celestial devil rebirth technique. No matter if she was Zhou Xuanji's wife or herself, she could not just stand by and watch. What are you doing? Daoya old man stared at her and reprimanded. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, Han Shenhua, Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, and the others stood up one after another. They could escape from this battle. But where could they run to? Rumble. At this moment, the crater began to shake violently. Everyone turned to look. Fate Emperor River was twisting violently, as though something was about to burst out. The pebbles and rocks in the huge pit were shaken into the air. It was a spectacular scene. Whoosh, a bolt of lightning struck down like a giant dragon, blasting a huge hole in the wall of the pit. Its destructive power was terrifying to the extreme. That is, founding Emperor Qi Wei, who was lying in the distance, became excited. His breathing quickened and his upper body trembled. Yang Lu frowned and had a bad premonition. He swung his axe at once. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts suddenly fell, causing the world to lose its color. A terrifying explosion resounded. An invisible barrier actually blocked all of the lightning. The scene was spectacular and shocking, causing everyone to be moved. The heavenly guards were even more shocked. They could not believe their eyes. They all subconsciously looked towards Fate Emperor River. A figure slowly rose up from Fate Emperor River. It was Zhou Xuanji. He wore the Tri-Sun Flame Qi robe, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. His face was grave and stern, and a purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. His hands hung down naturally, and as soon as he appeared, all living things went silent and the thunder dissipated. He stood on Fate Emperor River and did not give off any might. He was like a mortal, and his aura was almost non-existent, as if he had fused with the heavens and the earth. Everyone's eyes were gathered on him. Zhou Shaoxian, Jiang Shui, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were all excited. He really did not die. The hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples were so excited that their faces were red. They clenched their fists and tried their best to control their emotions. Zhou Xuanji glanced at the heavenly guards before looking at Xian Xianghua and asked, "Are you okay?" His tone was calm and no emotions could be heard from him. He had already seen the countless corpses around him, which was enough to tell how intense the battle had been. Xian Xianghua heaved a sigh of relief and sat down with her legs crossed. "If you still didn't come out, I might have really died," she said. She could not see through Zhou Xuanji, and the more he was like this, the more at ease she felt. Zhou Xuanji looked up at the heavenly guards and rose up slowly. The sun-devouring Qinggo sword appeared in his hand. Even in the darkness, his sword still shone with a cold radiance. "You are Zhou Xuanji? A sixth tribulation scattered immortal. You are quite powerful," Yang Lu said with squinted eyes. Who else could come out from Fate Emperor River other than Zhou Xuanji? His words surprised Emperor Sword Court and those who were still alive. The Sword Emperor already had the cultivation of a sixth tribulation scattered immortal? Everyone in the northern wilderness region knew that Zhou Xuanji's power could not be measured by cultivation stages. But every time he broke through a stage, his power would grow tremendously. "But it's a pity that I have the cultivation of an eighth tribulation scattered immortal. No matter how powerful you are not a match for me. Now kneel before me and beg me to spare your life. Depending on your performance, I will decide your life and death." Yang Lu laughed savagely and did not take Zhou Xuanji seriously at all. He was a genius too. He could tell that Zhou Xuanji had yet to become a great emperor, so he was not afraid. Zhou Xuanji stopped in the air and caressed the sun-devouring Qinggo sword. "Although I have yet to become a great emperor, I have broken through. Do you know what stage I have broken through to?" Yang Lu laughed condescendingly and deliberately mystified him. He did not ask the heavenly guards to attack but to kill Zhou Xuanji himself. After killing the top cultivator in the world, Spirit Sovereign Yen would surely be happy. When Jixian revives, he would surely reward him. "If I cannot kill you within 3 moves, I will kill myself here." Zhou Xuanji looked up at Yang Lu and said slowly. His tone was casual, but his eyes were so sharp. With this, the heavenly guards laughed even louder. "Is this guy crazy? A sixth tribulation scattered immortal killed an eighth tribulation scattered immortal in 3 moves? Yang Lu was laughing too, but his heart tightened suddenly because he noticed that the hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples were still looking at Zhou Xuanji passionately, as though they were injected with chicken blood. Could it be that Zhou Xuanji had some tricks up his sleeves? Without a word, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji with his axes in both hands. His speed was extremely fast. It was so fast that everyone's eyes could not keep up with him, including the other 29 heavenly guards. But Zhou Xuanji was even faster. He raised his hand and swung his sword, but no one saw it. In their eyes, he did not even raise his hand. A stream of sword light flashed and disappeared in an instant. Yang Lu's pupils contracted and instinctively wanted to block with his axes. His head was separated from his body. His head spun rapidly in the air and blood spurted out from his neck. The scene froze. Everyone's mouth was agape. From their point of view, Zhou Xuanji did not attack, but Yang Lu's head flew off strangely. While they were horrified, they felt a chill down their spines. They had witnessed Yang Lu's prowess with their own eyes. Only 1 out of 10 million cultivators survived, which was enough to show how powerful he was. Zhou Xuanji came up to Yang Lu in one step and grabbed his shoulder. He activated world internalization to absorb his magic energy. "Sorry, I overestimated you. 1 slash is enough." Zhou Xuanji stared at Yang Lu's head and laughed coldly. "Come. Wonderful book house." Chapter 383. How is this possible? Yang Lu, who only had his head left, stared at Zhou Xuanji furiously. Fear was hidden deep in his eyes. He had sensed Zhou Xuanji's sword chi just now, but it was too fast. It was so fast that he couldn't dodge or block it. They were clearly 2 major realms apart. Why was this happening? He couldn't understand. He wanted to regain control of his body, but he found that he couldn't control it. He couldn't even leave his body even if he wanted to. This was because his soul was in his physical body, and there was only the will of his soul in his head. "What are you doing?" he screamed in horror. He finally felt the aura of death. Zhou Xuanji pressed down on his shoulder and laughed coldly. "I want to kill you. You can beg me now. Depending on your performance, I will decide your life and death." This was said by Yang Lu. Now that Zhou Xuanji returned it to him, it was undoubtedly humiliating him. The heavenly guards in the distance were drenched in cold sweat. They did not dare to act at all. They could not see how powerful Zhou Xuanji was, and they could only feel a chill down their spines. Yang Lu was so angry that he almost exploded, but he could clearly feel his vitality fading away. "I was wrong. Please spare my life," he gritted his teeth and said. After saying this, he couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. He had never been so humiliated before. If this matter were to spread to the upper realm, how would he survive? However, Zhou Xuanji did not stop and continued to absorb his magic energy. An eighth tribulation scattered immortal's magic energy was incredibly powerful, and it was enough for his cultivation to improve. Yang Lu was anxious. He could no longer care about his pride and face. I beg you, spare my life. I beg you, just treat me as a dog, don't kill me. I'm willing to be your slave, please let me go this time. Ah. What do you want me to do for you to forgive me? Yang Lu's face was full of fear and despair, screaming at the top of his lungs. Seeing him in such a miserable state, no one sympathized with him. Instead they felt carefree. Those dead cultivators had also begged Yang Lu to let them live. This guy deserved to die. He should be in even more pain. Soon, Zhou Xuanji absorbed all of Yang Lu's magic energy and destroyed his soul. An eighth tribulation bodiless celestial was killed without any resistance. He turned to look at the other 29 heavenly guards. The heavenly guards were terrified and wanted to escape, but they didn't know how to report back. Spirit Sovereign Yin was more brutal than Yang Lu, and he never showed mercy to his subordinates. Zhou Xuanji took Yang Lu's storage ring and strolled toward the heavenly guards. Father is mighty. Zhou Shaoxian cried out excitedly. Just when she was in despair and indignation because of Xian Xianghua, her father appeared once again and killed his enemies with absolute power. At this moment, her eyes were about to turn into stars. Jiang Shui was also excited, but she didn't make a fuss like Zhou Shaoxian. In her heart, Zhou Xuanji could always turn misfortune into fortune. Hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples shouted the oath. Using the sword to support the world, using the sword to save the world. Using the sword to support the world, using the sword to save the world. Using the sword to support the world, using the sword to save the world. Their blood boiled and their eyes brimmed with tears. How many times had Zhou Xuanji saved the northern wilderness region? Their patriarch was invincible. He was their undefeatable faith. Zhou Xuanji pointed his sword at the 29 heavenly guards and asked, "Where is Spirit Sovereign Yin?" After realizing World Overlord, he could control the power of the heavens and earth. He could fight in the northern wilderness region without any hindrance. The previous slash was not obstructed by space or spiritual qi. It landed on Yang Lu's body directly. It was so fast that it could not be described with speed. Next, his target was Spirit Sovereign Yin. What was worth mentioning was that although Yang Lu was powerful, he was not a great emperor candidate. Great emperor candidate did not refer to power but to someone who was recognized by the heavenly law. Although Zhou Xuanji received instructions from the heavenly law and knew about the path to becoming a great emperor, he still could not understand what was so special about being a great emperor. "We don't know," a heavenly guard replied carefully. With so many heavenly guards around, if Zhou Xuanji wanted to attack, they were confident that they could escape. No matter how powerful Zhou Xuanji was, he could not kill all of them at the same time. Humans had the mentality of luck and so did other intelligent beings including those from the upper realm. Zhou Xuanji smiled and a murderous intent beamed out from his eyes. The heavenly guards' expressions changed drastically. They immediately used all kinds of divine abilities and escaped in different directions. Zhou Xuanji did not pursue them. As long as the heavenly guards were still in the northern wilderness region, they could not escape. He could track their location with the power of the heavens and the earth. He came to Xian Xianghua's back with a flash. He took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword and slashed it lightly on her shoulder to heal her. This scene gave many people a fright. But soon they realized that Zhou Xuanji did not kill Xian Xianghua. Her aura was also recovering, which was quite miraculous. Emperor Sword Court's disciples, listen up. Clean up the battlefield and check if there are any injured. Bury the dead. Zhou Xuanji instructed loudly as he healed Xian Xianghua. Hundreds of thousands of disciples began to move immediately. Jiang Shui and the others flew toward Zhou Xuanji. They had too many questions to ask. Far away. Baihao Yisun and Feng Qiul stood in the forest, both of them silent. Cold sweat covered Feng Qiul's forehead. His eyes were wide open and blood veins covered his eyeballs. He could not understand what he had just seen. Has he already become a great emperor? He asked carefully. Other than becoming a great emperor, how else could Zhou Xuanji be so powerful? That was an eighth tribulation scattered immortal. That was a cultivation that even the most powerful human in history could not reach before they ascended. Baihao Yisun said faintly with a complicated look in his eyes. He did not become a great emperor, but he can be called a great emperor candidate. He must have comprehended another powerful energy. Facing Zhou Xuanji he felt pressured. Once this brat becomes a great emperor, how powerful would he be? At Juedi Cliff, Spirit Sovereign Yen sat on a rock and stared ahead. A ball of demonic chi was surging at the edge of the cliff, which vaguely took the shape of a human. His expression changed suddenly and he frowned slightly. Yonglu is dead. It shouldn't be. Could it be because of Fate Emperor River? He mumbled to himself. He was a little confused but did not panic. The difference in power between him and Yonglu was huge. He could crush Yonglu with one hand, or else how could the unruly Yonglu submit to him? At this moment, the demonic chi dispersed. A silhouette landed on the edge of the cliff. It was Dugu. He should be called Devil Emperor Dugu. Devil Emperor Dugu stood tall and straight. Demonic chi wrapped around his body, covering his flesh. His face was pale and his white hair reached the ground. His eyes were blood-red with black pupils. He twisted his neck and sighed in amazement. It feels so good to be reborn. His eyes beamed with brilliance. 50,000 years ago, he dominated the world and was invincible. He became a great emperor and ascended. Because he died in the war in the upper realm, his soul was hidden in Juedi Cliff. After so many years, his ambition was almost extinguished. However, the first thing he did after his rebirth was to revive his ambition. A domineering aura exploded from his body, causing the rocks on the cliff to tremble violently. Spirit Sovereign Yen got up and clapped his hands as he laughed. The world-shaking demon emperor has finally been reborn. It's time for the immortal and mortal realms to feel your anger. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 384. Anger? Why would I be angry? Devil Emperor Dugu glanced at Spirit Sovereign Yen and asked indifferently. Seeing his attitude, Spirit Sovereign Yen was not angry. If you want to take revenge, I'm afraid you'll need to cultivate for a long time, but I have another way. Spirit Sovereign Yen chuckled. Devil Emperor Dugu quickly arrived in front of him, leaving behind a series of afterimages. The two of them were less than half a meter apart. Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression did not change. He was not afraid of Devil Emperor Dugu at all. Devil Emperor Dugu wasn't strong at the moment. Speak. Devil Emperor Dugu stared into his eyes and said faintly. Spirit Sovereign Yen looked excited as he said, I obtained a heavenly law stone by chance, and I can use it to create an invincible army. Heavenly law stone. Devil Emperor Dugu narrowed his eyes and asked, What's the heavenly Tao stone? Is it related to the worldly stone? Spirit Sovereign Yen replied, Both of them have similar effects. One contains the power of heavenly law, while the other contains the power of heaven and earth. They are both world creation wonders. Then he revealed his plan. Devil Emperor Dugu furrowed his brows when he heard this. He stared at Spirit Sovereign Yen and said, You are playing with fire. Spirit Sovereign Yen understood what he meant and said nonchalantly, What's there to be afraid of? Those powerful beings are either dead or unable to descend due to their cultivation. As long as we dominate the northern wilderness region and break away from the heavenly palace's control, we can develop on our own. Who knows, we might even be able to nurture the northern wilderness region into a large world. At that time, you and I will be the lord of the Kiliacosm. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Even his body began to tremble. Devil Emperor Dugu's brows were still furrowed. Spirit Sovereign Yan's tone changed as he said, I also want to find my son. He was once Grandmaster Aoshi's disciple and was banished to the mortal world by the heavenly palace. If you can help me find him, I can let him take you as his master. He was trying to rope in Devil Emperor Dugu. Devil Emperor Dugu was surprised. Oh, Grandmaster Aoshi? Speaking of Ji Xian, Spirit Sovereign Yen revealed a proud expression. He began to talk about Ji Xian's life. Sun Tomb. Zhou Xuanji and the others stood before Fate Emperor River and started to think about how to deal with it. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's entire body was covered in bandages. Even though he was a second tribulation loose immortal, he couldn't regrow his limbs because he didn't cultivate such a magical technique. He was not like Daoya Old Man who was weak in combat, but had mastered many life-saving abilities and spells. Let's just bury it here. If we bring Fate Emperor River to Skyfall, it will attract a lot of trouble in the future. Moreover, Fate Emperor River will not disappear unless the northern wilderness no longer exists. Fate Emperor River could allow one to become a great emperor. It sounded very powerful, but for the vast majority of people, it was useless. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Since it's like this, let's fill this place up and let Fate Emperor River return underground. He no longer needed Fate Emperor River. He already had the heavenly Tao mark in the depths of his soul. As long as he defeated 10 quasi-emperors, he would be able to become a martial emperor. The others had no objections. For them, becoming a great emperor was an extremely distant goal, almost untouchable. The group flew out of the crater and began to use various spells to fill the crater. Xiao Jinghong flew to Zhou Xuanji's side and said softly, "Revered teacher, Jiang Wudi is severely injured and on the verge of death. Should we save him?" Not only him, Songhai Ziggurat Lord Li Yinyu, Mountain Abyss Ziggurat Lord Zheng Junlu, and the other sanctum leaders are still alive. Zhou Xuanji replied calmly, "Of course we must save them." Now he no longer saw the 8 sanctums and 7 empires as his opponents. The existence of these factions was to ensure the power of the human race, so they must stay. Xiao Jinghong immediately left and passed down the order. At the same time, news of the battle at Sun Tomb spread. Tens of millions of people were killed or injured. The 8 sanctums and 7 empires were all severely injured. The prowess of an 8th tribulation scattered immortal shocked everyone. When the world heard that Zhou Xuanji dashed out from Fate Emperor River, saved Xian Xianghua, and killed an 8th tribulation scattered immortal, their blood boiled. This matter was like a hero's story in an opera, full of twists and turns. Zhou Xuanji consolidated his position as the world's top overlord. At the same time, the world's hatred for Xian Xianghua decreased. At least Xian Xianghua was fighting for the northern wilderness region. A few days later, the world began to point their fingers at Yang Di. Why didn't the world's top cultivator, the current Emperor Han Yuan, participate in the battle? Soon the world was filled with rumors. The Sword Emperor proved himself again. Those who went to Sun Tomb to stop the Sword Emperor from becoming a great emperor deserve to die. Zhou Xuanji is too powerful. He's going to surpass the predecessors. So the way of the sword can be so powerful. When will Spirit Sovereign Yan die? Yang Di is not worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as Zhou Xuanji. Half a month later, Zhou Xuanji flew to Skyfall with hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court disciples. He sent founding Emperor Qi Wei back first. As for the other factions, he could not care so much. It was already good enough for him to treat their injuries. It would be too troublesome to send them back one by one. Hundreds of thousands of disciples traveled across mountains and rivers while practicing their sword techniques. The scene was extremely majestic. After being stimulated by Zhou Xuanji, the disciples began to practice their sword techniques even without his orders. They wanted to be as powerful as their grand teacher, who could kill powerful cultivators from the upper realm with his sword. This day, Zhou Xuanji was teaching his daughter when he heard Dao Seeker's voice. "Meet me for an important matter." Zhou Xuanji heard her and gave his daughter a few reminders before disappearing. The others were not surprised and continued their journey. 100 miles away, Zhou Xuanji and Dao Seeker stood on a cliff. Below them were connected mountains that were shrouded in mist. It was hazy and beautiful like a paradise. "This is bad." Spirit Sovereign Yin revived Devil Emperor Dugu, Dao Seeker said with a deep voice. Dao Seeker said in a low voice. He felt a sense of pressure at the mention of Devil Emperor Dugu. He had lived for countless years but had never witnessed Lu Wuji's prowess. But he had witnessed Devil Emperor Dugu's invincible figure, which was unforgettable. Zhou Xuanji did not panic. He knew about Devil Emperor Dugu a long time ago. Without Devil Emperor Dugu's help, he could not have obtained the Tianxia map. He still had a good impression of Devil Emperor Dugu. Of course, if Devil Emperor Dugu wanted to be his enemy, he would not show mercy. Moreover, Devil Emperor Dugu's rebirth was a great help to him. This guy was not a great emperor candidate. He was a true great emperor. Other than that, Spirit Sovereign Yin obtained a Heavenly Law stone. He's going to use the power of Heavenly Law to create Heavenly Law puppets for all the powerhouses in the northern wilderness region. This will be the most terrifying crisis in history. There is no chance of winning. Dao Seeker continued. His countenance turned increasingly grim, and there was even fear in his eyes. Every generation of the northern wilderness region's almighty. It wasn't just the human clan's almighty beings, there were also almighty beings from other races. If Lu Wuji, Emperor Xia, Devil Emperor Dugu, Great Emperor Heartless, and the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword joined forces, who could stop them? Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown, "What's a Heavenly Law puppet?" Dao Seeker explained that every generation of almighties in the northern wilderness region had worked hard to become a great emperor, so they had been branded with the Heavenly Law imprint. The Heavenly Law puppets created by Spirit Sovereign Yin were like clones, and they all had the cultivation and strength of their original bodies when they left the northern wilderness region. After Zhou Xuanji understood, he had a strange look on his face. He was just fretting about not having a quasi-emperor to defeat. Chapter 385. How many heavenly law puppets are there exactly? Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice. He cursed in his heart. Just as the first wave subsided, another wave came. Can you let me rest for a while? I'm only 74 years old. How could he endure so much pressure? Dao Seeker sighed and said, I can't think about it. I advise you to hide overseas and ascend as soon as possible. Spread this news to the upper realm. Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions will definitely incur the wrath of the northern wilderness region's past powerhouses. When the time comes, they won't just stand by and watch. Zhou Xuanji frowned deeply. If it were him, he would be displeased to find out that someone had created his own heavenly law puppet. But he was still far from ascending. Moreover, after he ascended, he would be killed by the heavenly palace before he could even meet those powerful beings. After the northern wilderness region's experts ascended, the heavenly palace was the first to receive them. If the northern wilderness region was a dynasty, the heavenly palace would be the dynasty that controlled it. Spirit Sovereign Yan is currently at Juedi Cliff. It's best if you take a detour on your way back. I'll be heading overseas to fight for a chance of survival for the human race. Dao Seeker said solemnly with a gloomy expression. Remember, don't go looking for Spirit Sovereign Yan. You are indeed very strong, but he has many unparalleled experts under him. Don't go looking for your death. After saying that, Dao Seeker left in a hurry. Zhou Xuanji pondered on the spot and began to recall historical records. The Xia Emperor, who had led the human race to become the hegemon of the universe. The strongest of the human race, Lu Wuji. He was a noble who could shake mountains and rivers and almost exterminate the demon race. The unparalleled demon emperor of the demon race, the great Emperor Wuwang, who had once enslaved the human race. Wait a minute. There were too many legendary existences that gave him a headache just thinking about it. He shook his head and returned to Emperor Sword Court's group. He gathered all his trusted aides and walked at the very front. He softly told them about this matter. What? Really? Northern Sword Valiant widened his eyes and exclaimed. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. In the next second, he hurriedly covered his mouth, afraid that the disciples would hear. Daoya Old Man's face was ashen and he muttered, It's over. It's all over. The others were also frightened. Zhou Xuanji was powerful indeed, but to those heavenly law puppets he was just a junior. People were always in awe of their ancestors, especially those who were legendary. Furthermore, they were not facing just one ancestor but all of them. Even someone as proud as Xian Xianghua fell silent. Should we tell the world about this and gather the power of the world? Huang Lianxin asked hesitantly. Such a calamity should not be shouldered by Emperor Sword Court alone, much less by Zhou Xuanji. There was no chance of winning this round. Jiang Shui shook her head and said, Currently both humans and demons have suffered great losses. Not to mention Spirit Sovereign Yan and his heavenly law puppet army, even that 8th tribulation scattered immortal heavenly guard is enough to overturn the world. It was no exaggeration to say that Zhou Xuanji was already the most outstanding person in the world. If not for him, the northern wilderness region's human race might have already perished. Zhou Xiaoxian grabbed Zhou Xuanji's arm tightly and said, Father, don't be reckless. She was no longer a child and understood the seriousness of the matter. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and did not say anything. He would not retreat from this battle. It was not only for the sake of achieving the martial monarch realm, but also for the sake of protecting the people around him. The more time passed, the more heavenly law puppets there would be. Why don't I ascend now and pass on this matter? Xian Xianghua muttered. In the past, she did not bother to ask for reinforcements, but the situation was different now. The enemy was unprecedentedly powerful. Just like what Dao Seeker said, other than this method they would surely lose. No, the Heavenly Hall wants to kill you too. Aren't you courting death? Zhou Xuanji rejected decisively before looking at everyone. He said meaningfully, Everyone, the northern wilderness region is facing more and more calamities. There is not much time left for you. Cultivate well. You all return to Skyfall and focus on your cultivation. I will go to Juedi Cliff alone. If I cannot defeat them, I will retreat. With my current power, no one can stop me if I want to escape. Maybe Spirit Sovereign Yin has not created too many heavenly law puppets. We still have a chance. Everyone heard him and fell silent. They wanted to stop him, but they were in no position to do so. Zhou Xiaoxian was anxious and wanted to speak, but Zhou Xuanji covered her mouth. He looked at Jiang Shui and said with a smile, Take good care of this girl. Don't run out again. I don't want to be surrounded by enemies and have to think of a way to save her. Zhou Xiaoxian stopped struggling. Even her ears were blushing. Jiang Shui nodded and said with a smile, I believe you. She did not just believe that he could come back alive. Zhou Xuanji immediately turned into a stream of sword light and left. Lin Chang'e clenched his fists and cursed, "It's all my fault. I'm too weak. Master has to fight alone every time." Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Tsongjian, Ning Zifeng, Han Shenhua, Chongming Demon Monarch, and the others looked terrible too. The little black snake lay on Ah Big's head and sighed, "Seems like I need to work hard too." Daoya old man sighed and did not speak further. He looked toward the direction where Zhou Xuanji left, and his eyes became determined. At Juedi Cliff. Devil Emperor Dugu sat by the cliff and cultivated. Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on a giant boulder not far away. He raised a boulder that was radiating with rainbow radiance in his right hand. Thunderclouds billowed, mesmerizing the heavens and earth. Around the giant boulder were 5 silhouettes of different shapes and sizes. Each of them was emanating a horrifying aura. Boom! A bolt of lightning landed and turned into a silhouette. It landed beside the giant boulder and stood there quietly. These were all heavenly law puppets. Spirit Sovereign Yen looked down at the newly created heavenly law puppets and praised, "Finally, a great emperor. Marquis, I didn't expect you to work for me one day." Marquis. Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and looked a little shocked. Marquis' silhouette was domineering. Even though he did not speak or move, he was still emanating a domineering aura of invincibility. Thousands of waves ripple across the ages. Marquis' divine might since ancient times. Devil Emperor Dugu mumbled to himself. He stared at Marquis with a passionate gaze. He had always been eager to battle against such a great emperor. It was a pity that after he ascended, Marquis was still as dazzling as ever. He died before he could reach the height to fight against Marquis. It was such a pity. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed heartily. He was in a good mood. At this moment an air-piercing sound came from afar. Baihao Yisin, who was wearing silver armor, charged over with his spear. "Spirit Sovereign Yen," he said coldly with a stern expression, "I finally found you. This emperor has finally found you. Today only one of us can survive." After witnessing Zhou Xuanji's prowess, he felt that Spirit Sovereign Yen might not be a match for Zhou Xuanji. He had to avenge his humiliation before Zhou Xuanji attacked. Spirit Sovereign Yen glanced at him and smiled disdainfully. Another bolt of lightning landed and turned into the heavenly law puppets. Baihao Yisin stopped and looked at the 7 heavenly law puppets with a frown. Soon, his eyes locked onto Marquis and his expression changed drastically. Even though Marquis was only a silhouette, he could not forget that silhouette. When Marquis ascended, he became famous. At that time, who did not revere Marquis' domineering aura? He was one of them. He immediately thought of many things and had a bad premonition. Without a word, he raised his arms and roared furiously, "Die!" Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression changed. "This dog is using this move again. Come. Wonderful book house." Chapter 386. Please enter the text. Zhou Xuanji hurried toward Juedi Cliff. The closer he got to Juedi Cliff, the more uneasy he felt. He had mastered World Overlord and could sense the heaven and earth. The crisis of the world had arrived and it was getting more and more intense. According to his speed, he would arrive at Juedi Cliff in half a day. Originally, he could borrow the power of heaven and earth to directly teleport over, but that would consume too much energy, and it would be easy for him to fall into a situation where he would be attacked from both sides. Today, I will use the power of the heavens to revive the past generations of almighty beings, and together, we will create a new era in the northern wilderness region. The fate of the human race has come to an end, and if you want to live on, you can become slaves. A new main character of the world will be born and each clan can fight for it. As long as you find me and prove your strength, you will all have the chance to become the main character of the world. Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice suddenly resounded throughout the entire northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Such a vicious plan. This was to lure the overseas races into the northern wilderness region. His evil intentions should be punished. Zhou Xuanji sped up again. However, Spirit Sovereign Yan had yet to finish his words. "I've already awakened King Ho. Next, I'll awaken Emperor Xia Lu Wuji, Hegemon Sword Emperor Wang Xiaofei Shi Shinzong, Great Emperor Wuwang Buddha Ghost Emperor and many others. I'll use the power of the heavens to awaken all of the experts who have the qualifications to become great emperors. Great Emperor Heartless tried to stop me but was suppressed by me. Let me give you a word of advice. The will of God is not something you can stop." These words shocked the world. All the experts who have the qualifications to become emperors will be awakened? How could this be? The first reaction of all living beings in the world was disbelief. However, when they thought of how omnipotent immortals and gods were, they were terrified. Even the invincible great Emperor Heartless 90,000 years ago was no match for him, let alone the people of the present. Lu Wuji, who had wreaked havoc in the northern wilderness region, had been resurrected. Would the Sword Emperor be able to block so many experts by himself? For a moment, the world was in chaos. The crisis of the apocalypse made people crazy. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He did not expect Spirit Sovereign Yen to have already created a noble heavenly law puppet. No one could say for sure how powerful a noble was. However, the marquises could definitely be ranked in the top 10 in history when it came to the ability to suppress and rule an era. Even Daoya Old Man held Marquis in high esteem, claiming that Marquis was the most domineering existence among the ancestors of the human race. It was only because the era was different. If he had been born in the era of Emperor Xia, his historical status would definitely not be lower than Emperor Xia's. Of course, it was meaningless to talk about what-ifs. Zhou Xuanji took out the ancient god sword, and as he advanced, he summoned the 9 souls. He told them about Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions. Emperor Zhao was the first to curse. This kid is playing with fire. Every expert had their own pride. If those almighty existences who were still alive found out that they had become heavenly law puppets, how angry would they be? The higher one's cultivation was, the more they cared about their reputation. The heavenly palace, huh? Such a force is indeed full of villains. Fortunately, it's only the northern wilderness region. What do you mean lucky? Wang Ho, Emperor Xia, Lu Wuji, Great Emperor Wuwang, and Buddha Ghost Emperor. Who could stand against the 5 of them? It's not just them. There might be even more ancient existences. Devil Emperor Dugu is also supporting that brat from the Sky Palace. The souls of the almighty existences began discussing. They were not all from the northern wilderness region, but they understood how powerful this tribulation was. Countless years had passed, and the northern wilderness region had produced too many peerless cultivators. If these people formed an army, they could dominate all the mortal realms. Sovereign Xian, who had been silent, said, "The heavenly law stone cannot be used indefinitely. Using the heavenly law's power will be greatly depleted. We can still make it if we rush over now." Emperor Hanlin said, "You are already a great emperor candidate. To you this is a serendipity. But it's more of a disaster than a blessing." Zhou Xuanji nodded and continued to ask them which powerful cultivators were worth paying attention to. At Juedi Cliff, Bai Hao Yisan was pinned to a stone stele. His limbs were pierced by metal nails, and his neck and waist were bound by metal chains. He could not move at all. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. Looking at the 15 figures in front of him, his expression was extremely grim. He turned to look at Devil Emperor Dugu, who was cultivating, and said, "Hey Dugu brat, are you really going to help a nobody like this?" In the upper realm, Spirit Sovereign Yen was indeed a nobody. Having heard that, Spirit Sovereign Yen was indifferent. He had already blocked Bai Hao Yisan. Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and looked at Bai Hao Yisan. "Where there is a will, there is a will. Don't underestimate any nobody. Great Emperor Heartless, since you came to the lower realm, how many nobodies have you been forced to self-destruct?" Bai Hao Yisan heard this, and his expression changed as though he had eaten a fly. He wanted to retort, but he did not know how. Boom! Another bolt of lightning struck. It was another heavenly law puppet. Bai Hao Yisan glanced over, and his expression changed drastically. Lu Wuji. The heavenly law puppet represented the cultivation and power of the original Lu Wuji before his ascension. This meant that this Lu Wuji was much more powerful than the previous Lu Wuji's corpse. Because he possessed all the divine abilities and battle experience of Lu Wuji before his ascension. Seeing Lu Wuji's arrival, Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled. Devil Emperor Dugu glanced at Lu Wuji thoughtfully. They did not notice that Marquis tilted his head slightly, as though he was looking at Lu Wuji. All the heavenly law puppets were motionless. Even though they were emanating powerful auras, they were still like wooden pillars. "Oi, kid, are you absolutely confident that these heavenly law puppets will listen to you?" Bai Hao Yisan asked Spirit Sovereign Yen suddenly. Spirit Sovereign Yen had already told him about the heavenly law stone, so he naturally wanted to rope him in. Although Great Emperor Heartless was in such a sorry state, Spirit Sovereign Yen knew how arrogant this guy was in the upper realm. "Of course. The heavenly law stone is in my hands, so they will definitely listen to me," Spirit Sovereign Yen said proudly. Having heard this, Bai Hao Yisan squinted his eyes. At this moment, Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled proudly and said, "Did you find a way?" He suddenly put the heavenly law stone into his mouth. Next, his body gave off a rainbow radiance as he turned into the heavenly law stone. By how Isin almost cursed out loud. So shameless. Devil Emperor Dugu was speechless. Swoosh, an air-piercing sound came. The three turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji flying over on his sword with a powerful aura. Seeing him, Bai Hao Isin was pleasantly surprised and cried out, "Brat Zhou, save this emperor. This emperor owes you a favor in the future." "You are Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji?" Spirit Sovereign Yen said with a disdainful smile. The 16 heavenly law puppets turned to look at Zhou Xuanji. All of them unleashed their auras, which shook the clouds and shook the mountains within a radius of 100 miles. Zhou Xuanji stopped 100 meters away from them. He immediately saw Lu Wuji's heavenly law puppet. Very powerful. Even though he had already mastered World Overlord, he still sensed a trace of danger. Devil Emperor Dugu looked up at him and said, "Zhou Xuanji, give up. No matter how powerful you are, you can't turn the tables now. Why don't we work together?" Spirit Sovereign Yen did not speak. Zhou Xuanji's talent and righteousness made him wary. Such a genius must be eliminated. But he had to give Devil Emperor Dugu some face. "If I give up, will you spare the northern wilderness region's humans?" Zhou Xuanji asked calmly. He was curious. Since Spirit Sovereign Yen wanted to betray the Heavenly Hall, why must he eradicate the humans? Chapter 387. No. The humans of the northern wilderness region must be annihilated. Spirit Sovereign Yen replied forcefully. He could take Zhou Xuanji in, but he could not allow Zhou Xuanji to make any requests. If Zhou Xuanji was unwilling, then he could kill Zhou Xuanji with a justifiable reason. Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head and said, "No race is always the main character of the world. In other mortal realms, the demons might be in charge and the demons might be in charge. Why be so stubborn? You will ascend sooner or later to pursue a higher great Tao." He watched Zhou Xuanji's rise. In his heart, Zhou Xuanji was like his junior or disciple. He really did not want this brat to die here. Zhou Xuanji took out the sun-devouring Tiango sword and True Lord Xianxing sword and said, "If so, then let's fight. I also want to see how powerful the previous powerful cultivators are." Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head and did not speak anymore. He closed his eyes and continued his cultivation. Spirit Sovereign Yen burst out in laughter. His laughter was filled with disdain. This brat is so arrogant. But he could understand. A genius who had never tasted defeat always thought that he was the most powerful and looked down on his seniors. The 17 heavenly law puppets leaped up and charged toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes and charged at them with his dual sword wills. His body was like a sharp sword, flashing with a cold light. In the blink of an eye, he was fighting with the 17 heavenly law puppets. He danced with both swords at extreme speed. But even so, he was at a disadvantage. Wang Ho did not have any enchanted artifacts but only his fists and legs. His attacks were powerful and domineering. Zhou Xuanji could hardly block each of his punches and kicks. Lu Wuji used his palms as weapons. Bolts of lightning coiled around him and tore apart the sword qi with great power. The other 15 heavenly law puppets were not weak either. Each had their own abilities. Some wielded swords, some wielded sabers, some wielded spears like dragons, and some swung their horsetail whisks with boundless magic energy. Their attacks were extremely ferocious. No matter how exquisite Zhou Xuanji's sword techniques were, he could not block them. Seeing this, Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed even more savagely. Bai Hao Isin sighed. "It's over. No one can save this emperor." At this moment, Zhou Xuanji activated the divine energy of the sun-devouring Tiango sword and slashed with all his might. Marquis Lu Wuji and the other heavenly law puppets quickly dodged, but one heavenly law puppet was too slow and turned into ashes right away. Spirit Sovereign Yen stopped laughing and started to watch the battle seriously. Bai Hao Isin's eyes lit up, and anticipation filled his heart. With the sword soul, Zhou Xuanji regained the upper hand. He didn't borrow the power of heaven and earth. He wanted to see how strong he was. Apart from Marquis and Lu Wuji, everyone else's strength was average. At most, they were a bit stronger than Shi Shinzong. Of course, Shi Shinzong was not weak. If it was one-on-one, he was confident that he could defeat all the other puppets except for Lu Wuji and Marquis. Lu Wuji was a seventh tribulation scattered immortal, and so was Marquis. However, their divine powers were very powerful. Facing Zhou Xuanji's attacks, they could always dodge or use some kind of divine ability to dissipate his sword qi. Previously, Lu Wuji only had the cultivation of his main body, and his power was not even 1/10 of the main body's. The 9 hell flame extinction that he had inherited was quite powerful, so Zhou Xuanji was wary of Lu Wuji opening the yin-yang boundary again. There was a loud bang. A bolt of lightning descended and turned into a heavenly law puppet. Without hesitation it charged toward Zhou Xuanji. This scene made Zhou Xuanji frown. He suddenly remembered that his target was Spirit Sovereign Yen and not these heavenly law puppets. Now 18 heavenly law puppets had appeared. He had destroyed one, and the other 17 were enough for him to become a great emperor. After the thought, he borrowed the power of heaven and earth and his aura changed suddenly. The purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. He activated world reincarnation, and all the heavenly law puppets were pushed back by his magic energy. Taking this opportunity, Zhou Xuanji came up to Spirit Sovereign Yen with one step. He activated the sky-dominating divine sword soul, and a sword light flashed. Spirit Sovereign Yen dodged in fear, but his left shoulder and arm were still sliced off. He quickly retreated, distancing himself from Zhou Xuanji. The other 17 heavenly law puppets came over and blocked Zhou Xuanji with all their divine abilities. This guy is a 9th tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. Spirit Sovereign Yen was much more powerful than Yang Lu. Their reaction speed was worlds apart. However, it was impossible for someone to surpass Great Tribulation scattered immortal in the mortal world. He could only be a 9th tribulation scattered immortal. Spirit Sovereign Yen roared furiously, "Bastard! You dare to injure me? I will make you beg for your death." After he spoke, the rainbow radiance on his body soared into the clouds, and his original form was revealed. His left shoulder was covered in blood, and he had lost his left arm. His face was hideous and he wanted to tear Zhou Xuanji into pieces. Boom, boom, boom. 9 bolts of lightning struck down and turned into 9 heavenly law puppets. All of them were powerful swordsmen. Some held 2 swords, some held a broadsword, and some held a long sword that was curved like a snake. Seeing them, Zhou Xuanji felt unwell. He recognized the Hegemon Sword Emperor and Sky Sundering Sword Emperor Wang Xiaofei at first glance. He had seen the 2 sword emperors in the inheritance space, and he had a deep memory of them. 9 emperors of the sword's way. The 9 heavenly law puppets charged toward Zhou Xuanji and besieged him together with the other 17 heavenly law puppets. Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhou Xuanji activated the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. The majestic Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha rose from the ground and blasted the 26 heavenly law puppets away with the power of heaven and earth and world reincarnation. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha, which was 2,000 meters tall, pierced through the clouds like a holy Buddha with divine might. Baihao Yisin was speechless and mumbled, "This brat's talent is too outrageous." Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and frowned. He actually mastered the overlord of the realm. Devil Emperor Dugu sighed. His emotions were complicated. He liked Zhou Xuanji more like this, but he had no choice but to watch from the sidelines. The Hegemon Sword Emperor held his sword with both hands and slashed at the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha furiously. A sword chi that was thousands of meters long clashed with the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha, but it was a pity that it could not shake the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Zhou Xuanji fused into the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's body. He stretched out 1,000 arms, each holding a golden sword, and slashed furiously. Facing so many seniors who were qualified to be great emperors, Zhou Xuanji felt proud. Very good. Today he was going to challenge the most powerful cultivator in history to prove that he was the most powerful cultivator in history. Boom! The ground sank and billowing dust billowed. Devil Emperor Dugu and Spirit Sovereign Yen dodged quickly. "Damn you! This emperor is here too." Baihao Yisin cursed as he was covered in dust. Following this, the ground caved in and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The 26 Heavens Path puppets showed no fear and continued to attack the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Although the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha had 1,000 swords, it was unable to keep up with the speed of these experts. It was like an elephant swatting at a fly. If not for the world's power, Zhou Xuanji would have been torn to shreds. He did not panic and his gaze locked onto Spirit Sovereign Yen. Spirit Sovereign Yen landed on the barren land 10,000 meters away, glaring at him fiercely. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha suddenly disappeared, and Zhou Xuanji came before Spirit Sovereign Yen in a single step. He held the sun-devouring Tiango sword in his right hand and furiously slashed out. Boom! A beam of light burst out from the ground and caught the sun-devouring Tiango sword with one hand. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. Who was this? Come. Wonderful bookstore com. Chapter 388. The heavenly law puppet in front of Zhou Xuanji was muscular and domineering. It had 4 arms and grabbed Zhou Xuanji's sword with one hand while punching his chest with both fists, sending him flying away. He quickly stabilized himself in the air and stared coldly at the heavenly Tao puppet. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed condescendingly. Zhou Xuanji, this is the first heavenly law puppet I created. He has been hiding underground just in case. Do you know who he is? There's no way you can defeat him. Zhou Xuanji took out all of the legendary swords above gold grade and had them float around him, pointing them at Spirit Sovereign Yen. Who? He asked indifferently. No matter who it was, it didn't matter. They were all fakes. This is War God Xiling. I don't need to explain his background, do I? Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled proudly. When he mentioned this name, his tone became slightly fanatical. The War God Xiling was an ancient existence in the legends. Legend had it that he was the one who taught Emperor Xia divine abilities, allowing him to lead the human race to dominate the northern wilderness region. He ascended before Emperor Xia ascended to the top. Of course, Zhou Xuanji had heard of this name before. The teacher of the human sovereign was incredibly famous, and the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword could not compare to him. He wasn't afraid of War God Xiling, and he attacked Spirit Sovereign Yen again. The other heavenly law puppets charged over again and attacked him from all sides. Each heavenly law puppet was more powerful than a third tribulation scattered immortal. They did not have intelligence and did not know fear, which made Zhou Xuanji very difficult to deal with. This was especially true for War God Xiling. This guy was clearly more powerful than Wang Ho and Lu Wuji, and the power contained in his 4 arms was terrifying. He even suspected that this guy could lift Skyfall. Even with the power of heaven and earth in his body, he could not get close to Spirit Sovereign Yen. Devil Emperor Dugu sighed. The fact that Zhou Xuanji could fight to such a degree already shocked him. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to stop so many generations of experts. The 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword. The 9 types of sword Daos had endless transformations and were extremely domineering. The noble fist could shake mountains and rivers. Lu Wuji possessed remarkable abilities and could turn the rotten into the miraculous. The War God Xiling was even more awe-inspiring and invincible. Apart from this, there were still so many experts who had the potential to become great emperors. Zhou Xuanji had no chance of victory. Zhou Xuanji, do you feel powerless? Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed maniacally and continued to summon heavenly law puppets. I admit that you are indeed very strong. Your talent is greater than my son's. Unfortunately, you don't have a brain and can't tell the correct path. Death cannot wipe out your crimes. Don't worry, I will give you a chance to reincarnate. Be a good mortal in your next life. Drift and sink in the human world and don't fight with the gods. His voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth, drowning out the rumbling of thunder and the wailing of ghosts and gods. Boom. Another heavenly law puppet descended. As the powerful light dissipated, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji straightaway. Zhou Xuanji controlled dozens of legendary swords to fight, and even though he was surrounded, he was not at a disadvantage. It was just that he was unable to come into contact with Spirit Sovereign Yen. At this moment he was like an ancient war god, insufferably arrogant. His aura was so strong that he was worthy of being called the Sword Emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yen suddenly thought of something, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He raised his left hand and waved it towards the sky. In an instant, a gigantic illusion appeared in the sky above the northern wilderness region. It was the scene of the heavenly law puppets surrounding Zhou Xuanji. With his cultivation he naturally could not do such a thing. But now that he was connected to the heavenly law, he was the heavens. Look, this is the top cultivator of the northern wilderness region. He's powerful indeed. He's fighting War God Xiling, Lu Wuji, Wang Ho, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way and so on. His opponents are all powerful cultivators who are qualified to become great emperors in each era. It's a pity that no matter how devilish his talent is, he can't defend against the joint attacks of so many powerful cultivators. How long do you think he can last? Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice resounded across the entire northern wilderness region. He was not trying to boost Zhou Xuanji's reputation but to make everyone despair. To him, Zhou Xuanji was going to die without a doubt, so why not shock the world before his death? All humans, demons and ghosts looked up. No one cried out in shock. Everyone was silent. The battle was so intense that it dazzled everyone's eyes. Everyone could sense that person's anxiety and danger. If Zhou Xuanji was a little slower, he would have died without a doubt. Skyfall. All the disciples looked up at the sky and clenched their fists. They were furious and expectant. They were furious for Spirit Sovereign Yen and expectant for Zhou Xuanji. On the top of the mountain, Jiang Shui held Zhou Xiaoshuan's hand tightly. Both mother and daughter's eyes were red, and they did not even dare to breathe loudly. The others' expressions were also unsightly. Xiao Jinghong and Zhao Tsongjian's bodies trembled. They could not hold back their anger. Zhou Xuanji displayed the demeanor of a sword emperor to the world. Everyone fought against him, but he was incredibly domineering. He fought against 28 alone, and the ground crumbled. Lightning interweaved, and it was as though the end of the world had arrived. At this moment he could no longer care about Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions. The enemy's attack gave him no time to think about anything else. Hunyuan Royal City. Yang Di stood in front of the palace and looked up at the sky. His brows were tightly furrowed. He did not rejoice in Zhou Xuanji's misfortune but felt indignant. He's already so powerful, he mumbled to himself, feeling very sullen. All along he had thought that he was more powerful than Zhou Xuanji. After all, they had never fought before. But looking at Zhou Xuanji's performance, he felt helpless. If it were him, he would not even last 10 rounds. Even he was shocked, let alone the rest of the world. Everyone was silent. This battle was so tragic and shocking in their eyes. They could only pray for Zhou Xuanji. The demons were silent too, but they did not despair. They could only rise up after the human race was destroyed. But the current Sword Emperor was really powerful. He was almost invincible. On a tall mountain, the man in the woven rush raincoat stood on the summit. Mist shrouded him, and an illusion was reflected in the sky. Witnessing Zhou Xuanji's battle, he was speechless for a long time. A long while later. So I was wrong. He sighed, and his tone was filled with desolation. Compared to Zhou Xuanji, the Yang Di he chose was still a hermit and lacked the charisma of a human leader. If he knew that Zhou Xuanji was so devilishly talented, he would have changed his choice. But there were no ifs. At this rate, Zhou Xuanji would surely die. More and more heavenly law puppets appeared. 30, 35, 40. Zhou Xuanji was at a complete disadvantage. Even with the Tianxia map providing him with endless magic energy and the world's power to support him, he could not withstand so many powerful cultivators. Spirit Sovereign Yan did not mock Zhou Xuanji anymore. He was silent, as though he was convinced by Zhou Xuanji's willpower. Devil Emperor Dugu levitated in the sky with a deep frown. His eyes sparkled and no one knew what he was thinking. Zhou Xuanji, who was at the end of his tether, was still fighting. All sorts of sword techniques and sword souls appeared. Even though he was injured, he did not hesitate to attack. "Brat, you are going to die." Emperor Zhao's voice came into Zhou Xuanji's ears. The ancient god sword was fighting so the 9 souls could communicate with him. Zhou Xuanji ignored him. His eyes were cold as he focused on the battle. He knew that if this continued he would surely lose. But now he had no way out. Even if he wanted to escape, the 40 heavenly law puppets would not give him the chance. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 389. I didn't expect the Heavenly Path Stone to have such a use. Unfortunately, no one in the mortal world can win. Lu Wuji's voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, filled with helplessness. If Zhou Xuanji died, they would not be able to live either. However, death was not scary to them. Their current state could be said to be worse than death. If they didn't have their own obsessions, how could they have become the sword souls of the ancient god sword? Zhou Xuanji continuously switched between world reincarnation and world internalization. His hands and the dozens of legendary swords did not stop either. If he stopped for even a tenth of a second, the price would be death. War God Xiling descended from the sky and smashed his leg towards Zhou Xuanji. The thunderclap sword blocked his leg, but it was pressed down and landed on Zhou Xuanji's shoulder. The powerful force bent Zhou Xuanji's legs and he almost fell. With a sway of his body, he turned into a silver sword and charged toward War God Xiling. This scene caused an uproar throughout the world. Sword Emperor sword transformation. This was especially so for the sword cultivators. They all knew that Zhou Xuanji had said something famous before. The man was the sword and the sword was the man. In the past they had thought that it was the union of the heart and the sword. Who would have thought that humans could also become swords? Do your best, Sword the Arch. Kill them all. Where is this place? We have to go and support the Sword Sovereign. The human race can't be slaves and we can't let the Sword Emperor fight alone. The Sword Emperor is mighty. The entire human race started to shout, cheering for Zhou Xuanji, even though Zhou Xuanji could not hear them. All of the disciples wanted to go and support Zhou Xuanji, but Daoya Old Man and the others stopped them. With their strength it would be useless even if they rushed over. On top of the mountain, Daoya Old Man suddenly took a step forward, turned around and said to the crowd, Look after Emperor Sword Court. Don't let the disciples leave. I'll go to a secluded place to cast a spell and increase fate for Xuanji. The crowd did not suspect him and did not stop him. The other side. Zhou Xuanji, who had turned into a silver sword, wanted to chase after Spirit Sovereign Yin, but the heavenly law puppets obstructed him in every way possible, making it impossible for him to get close to Spirit Sovereign Yin. Even if he swung his sword from afar, his sword chi would still be blocked by the heavenly law puppets. Damn it, is it really impossible? Zhou Xuanji returned to his human form and gnashed his teeth. He could not die. He had too many ties, so how could he die here? This is the general trend. How can a man's life fight against the heavens? What an interesting method. Sigh, I'm really going to die here. You still want to revive? What a pity, kid. We'll accompany you in death. Don't be afraid. To be killed by a minion, I can't accept this. The souls continuously spoke in Zhou Xuanji's ears, as if they were saying their last words. Zhou Xuanji's heart sank. You still have hope. A violent cry came and woke Zhou Xuanji up. The speaker was none other than Emperor Hanlin. Don't think about killing that bug called Spirit Sovereign Yin. Hurry up and kill the 9 great emperor candidates, then use the celestial devil rebirth technique to be reborn. Once you're reborn, you'll become a great emperor right away and make a comeback, dominating the past and present. Emperor Hanlin said in a low voice. His tone was filled with dominance. His words shocked the other souls, and they all asked what the celestial devil rebirth technique was. Zhou Xuanji was also quite shocked. How did Emperor Hanlin know that he cultivated the celestial devil rebirth technique? He didn't have time to think too much. He found a target and madly attacked it. When the target was a heavenly law puppet, everything was easy. War God Xiling, Marquis, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, and Lu Wuji were all very powerful. They had all become great emperors before they ascended after all, and Zhou Xuanji could not do anything to them. However, the other great emperor candidates were nothing to him. Soon he had killed 5 great emperor candidates. At this moment he was determined to die. The more he killed, the more he would earn. The more he killed, the more he would earn. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji had changed his target, Spirit Sovereign Yin shook his head and cried out, "It's useless. Since ancient times, how many geniuses have there been? How can you kill them all?" Boom. Another heavenly law puppet descended with a powerful aura that surpassed a 5th tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji focused on fighting. The 6th, the 7th, the 8th. Including the battle at the beginning, he had already killed 9 great emperor candidates. The frenzied battle consumed a lot of energy, and the Qinsha map's supply of magic energy began to decrease. Soon he reached the 10th great emperor candidate. He did not stop. He was going to die anyway, so he was going to kill with all his might. The more he killed, the more powerful he would be after becoming a great emperor. Bai Hao Yisun climbed up from the rubble. He coughed a few times and his face was covered in dust. He looked up and saw that Zhou Xuanji was still fighting, which made him feel admiration for him. This boy was born in the wrong era, he sighed. If Zhou Xuanji had been 10,000 years earlier, he might have already ascended to the upper realm and become a mighty figure. This was fate. The more devilishly talented someone was, the more difficult their fate would be. Devil Emperor Dugu suddenly appeared beside Spirit Sovereign Yin and said, "You really can't spare his life?" Spirit Sovereign Yin was inwardly shocked. Such incredible speed. Hadn't this fellow just been reborn? He said in a low voice, "It's not that I don't want to give him a chance. You saw it yourself. He had already allowed the entire world to watch the battle. If he spared Zhou Xuanji, wouldn't he be giving the human race hope? Zhou Xuanji had to die." Devil Emperor Dugu's face was dark and he frowned deeply. Spirit Sovereign Yin could not help but feel wary. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji began to show signs of fatigue. The 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword quickly charged at him, and in an instant dozens of sword wounds appeared on his body. Even his Tri-Sun Flame Chi robe became tattered. As expected of the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword, Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. He knew that he was at the end of his rope. However, he did not stop. He continued to kill enemies. When he reached the 18th Quasi-Emperor, he finally could not hold on any longer and was punched through the abdomen by War God Xiling, causing blood to splatter across the sky. He suddenly raised his head and let out an angry roar. All the divine swords disappeared, and a black shadow flew out from his body. It rushed into the clouds at an extremely fast speed and disappeared. Spirit Sovereign Yin frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. Devil Emperor Dugu was the same. They did not sense the aura of the primordial spirit, so they did not think too much about it. Zhou Xuanji's vitality had yet to dissipate completely. He turned to look at Spirit Sovereign Yen with an ice-cold gaze and said, "Heavenly law reincarnation. Those who are unjust will bring about their own destruction." As soon as he finished speaking, his life force was severed. The world was silent. Jiang Shui fainted on the spot. Zhou Xiaoxian hugged her and burst into tears. The eyes of Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, Beixiao Wangjian, Huang Lianxin, Han Shenhua, Chongming Demon Monarch, Lin Changge, and the rest were all red. They were filled with rage and sorrow and were on the verge of losing their minds. Seeing Zhou Xuanji die, the demons did not feel happy. Even someone as powerful as Zhou Xuanji could not stop Spirit Sovereign Yen. Even though the demons were the main characters of the world, they were still puppets. They would still become Spirit Sovereign Yan's slaves. Yeah. Bai Hao Yisin felt incredibly stifled, and all the words he wanted to say turned into a sigh. War God Xiling carried Zhou Xuanji's corpse and came before Spirit Sovereign Yen. He examined it, and only after confirming that Zhou Xuanji had died did he feel at ease. However, what was strange was that Zhou Xuanji's soul had already dissipated, leaving behind only a trace of his remnant soul. He did not even have any memories. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 390. The top cultivator in the northern wilderness region, Zhou Xuanji, is dead. From today onwards, it will be the era of saints and I will be the ruler of the mortal realm. Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice rang out in a domineering manner, as if a god was giving orders. The human race was furious and all the cities were in an uproar. Damn it! Even the Sword Emperor is dead. Is there no one who can defeat him? He's from the upper realm, an immortal god. How can we possibly defeat him? The human race has perished. The heavenly Tao is unfair. Why is it treating us like this? Despair and fear spread among the human race. For a moment, all human dynasties were in chaos. In the face of death, there would always be people who would erupt with their inner evil desires. Sometimes, humans were even scarier than demons. Especially when hope is lost. Juedi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen continued to create heavenly law puppets. Devil Emperor Dugu had already buried Zhou Xuanji's corpse, and a tombstone was erected. Bai Hao Yisin stood beside him and did not say anything for a long time. Both of them had once been invincible, and now their feelings were extremely complicated. Even they themselves couldn't explain it clearly. Devil Emperor Dugu turned around and asked Spirit Sovereign Yen, "What do you plan to do next?" Spirit Sovereign Yen said with a cold smile, "I'll kill those heavenly guards first, then slaughter the human race. In order to find my son, I'll slaughter a dynasty every year. What do you think?" Now that Zhou Xuanji was dead, no one in the northern wilderness region could threaten him. After that, he would be separated from the heavenly palace so he could cultivate without worry. As for the main character of the northern wilderness region, it was not important. As long as it wasn't a human. Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head. He leaped into the air and left swiftly. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed loudly, not stopping them. The northern wilderness region already belonged to him, so it didn't matter where Devil Emperor Dugu went. He believed that Devil Emperor Dugu wouldn't dare to ascend, and was only thinking of ways to recover his cultivation. He turned to look at the heavenly law puppets in front of him. He revealed a maniacal smile and muttered, "Not enough. It's not enough. The more heavenly law army he had, the better. It would be best if it was enough to topple the heavenly palace." On the other side, Bai Hao Yisin prepared to sneak away. "Great Emperor Heartless, do you want to know why he told you to reincarnate?" Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice traveled into his ears, causing his body to freeze, and he stopped in his tracks. In a small town in the Bahan dynasty, a streak of black light descended from the sky and landed in a courtyard. The black light dissipated and a naked baby appeared on the ground. His limbs were curled up and he was sleeping peacefully. The sky was about to turn dark. A man in a plain robe walked in. He was stunned when he saw the baby. He instinctively drew his sword and looked around vigilantly. The courtyard was not big and he lived alone. How could there be a baby here? He carefully approached the baby. When he saw the baby lying naked on the cold ground, his heart softened and he picked it up. The humans are all pitiful in the apocalypse. The man sighed. His face was filled with worry as he carried the baby into the house. The next morning, the infant suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were pure and there was a trace of killing intent in their depths. He was the reborn Zhou Xuanji. The memories gradually became clear in his mind. At this moment he was lying on the bed, covered with a blanket, and the room was filled with the fragrance of sandalwood. Sword Spirit. He called softly in his heart. Sword Master, what can I do for you? The Sword Spirit's voice rang out, making him heave a sigh of relief. He turned around and saw that there was no one else in the house. His divine telekinesis was still there, and as it swept across the area, the entire town was within his sight. There was no one in the courtyard either. As such, he took out all of his legendary swords one by one. After making sure that none of them were missing, he felt at ease. With the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique, each rebirth was not a new beginning. His soul power would be preserved, and his cultivation would recover in a short period of time. Otherwise, how could Xian Xianghua and the ancient Diablo rule over the world? He suddenly noticed that there were 18 black tattoos on his right arm, which were as thin as a strand of hair. As he looked at them, he somehow understood their meaning. Heavenly Law Mark. It was formed from the fate of a great emperor candidate. With 10 tattoos he could become a great emperor. Zhou Xuanji could not become a great emperor for now. His body was not fully grown yet, so he needed time. With the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique's dominance, he would grow up in less than 10 years. He was not afraid that Jiang Shui would take things too hard. With Xian Xianghua around, she would surely teach her the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique. Spirit Sovereign Yin, wait a few more years. I will definitely take your head. Zhou Xuanji deeply breathed in and closed his eyes as he sensed the power of the heavens and earth. With the help of the heavens and earth, he would grow even faster. At least he would grow faster than Xian Xianghua. After a while he heard footsteps. The man who had saved him quickly walked in. Phew. Luckily you didn't wake up. Because of you I came back early. Do you know how many spirit pills I lost? The man muttered to himself as he took out a porcelain bottle that contained milk. He planned to feed Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji did not open his eyes, but he could sense it through his divine sense. He immediately felt a chill. Just as he was about to speak, another person rushed in. Was a woman. The woman slapped the man and said coldly, Shengguan Jisoo, I misjudged you. I never thought that you would give up on yourself. You're not a man. The man called Shengguan Jisoo was furious. What did I do? Didn't I just come back early from the lecture hall? He said in a low voice, a sorrowful look in his eyes. The woman in front of him wore a red dress and had a pretty face. She gave off a cold and aloof aura, giving her an icy beauty. The woman in the red dress looked at him and said, You no longer have the talent you had back then. You should cherish this opportunity to cultivate. Did you know that Immortal Master Qin originally wanted to expel you, but my father went to plead for you, giving you the opportunity to stay? Shengguan Jisoo's pride was hurt, so he started to argue with the woman in the red dress. Zhou Xuanji listened the entire time and quickly understood what had happened. It turned out that they were a pair of lovers. 3 years ago, Shengguan Jisoo had extraordinary talent and was high-spirited in this town, winning the woman's heart. However, 2 years ago, Shengguan Jisoo's Dantian had been destroyed while he was out on a mission. Even though his Dantian had been saved, he no longer had the cultivation talent he had before. Even though the woman in the red dress did not abandon him, she became more and more impatient with him, and it was easy for them to argue. Because of this matter, Shengguan Jisoo had been quite sensitive, and he had endured it all this time. However, he had come back early for Zhou Xuanji out of goodwill, so how could he allow himself to be slandered? Seeing Zhou Xuanji, the woman in red's expression became even worse, and she said in a low voice, Shengguan Jisoo, the Sword Emperor has died, and the human race is facing a great disaster. You can't even take care of yourself, and yet you're raising abandoned children? With that, she flicked her sleeves and left. Shengguan Jisoo wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he clenched his fists and remained silent. If it was before, he might have chased after Zhou Xuanji and said all sorts of sweet nothings to him. But now he did not want to abandon Zhou Xuanji. Because he had no parents since he was young, he had been adopted by an old beggar and relied on begging for a living. Later on, an immortal discovered that he had talent for cultivation, which changed his fate. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, he could not bear to see him, and he thought of himself. Sigh. He sighed and sat on the bench without saying a word. He suddenly remembered Zhou Xuanji. He quickly picked up the porcelain bottle and walked toward the bed. He turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji levitating above the bed. He was so frightened that his body trembled and the vase fell to the ground. Ghost. Come. Wonderful bookstore. Com. Chapter 391. Zhou Xuanji expressionlessly looked at Shengguan Jisoo. It was a little scary for a baby like him to look at someone like that. Shengguan Jusu drew his sword and took 3 steps back. He gulped and asked cautiously, what kind of monster are you? He secretly regretted it. As expected, he couldn't just randomly pick people up. If the demon child had attacked him last night, he shuddered. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. I am your destiny, Zhou Xuanji said calmly. This boy was poor, but he took him in, which meant that he was kind. He was willing to help this kid. To him it was a piece of cake. Before he became a great emperor, he could not return to Skyfall in case he brought trouble to Skyfall. Spirit Sovereign Yen wanted to slaughter the human race, but he had to find the main character of the new world first. Otherwise, if his fate was cut off, his ambitions would fall through. Opportunity? Shengguan Jusu was stunned. His nervousness and fear instantly disappeared. He was too eager to become stronger. Back then, when he was in high spirits, who dared to not give him face? His beautiful woman was also like a little bird in front of him. Now, the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He gritted his teeth and said, "What do I need to pay?" He had read many stories about demons bewitching people and helping them become stronger, but they would also deprive them of their humanity. It's simple, Zhou Xuanji said, causing Shengguan Jusu's heart to leap to his throat. Call me Grandpa 3 times. Cold sweat broke out on Shengguan Jusu's forehead, and his body trembled. Wait a minute. What? His eyes widened and his face was filled with astonishment. He suspected that he had heard wrongly. Zhou Xuanji gave a mysterious smile and said, You practiced the sword? Shengguan Jusu came back to his senses. His face was filled with indignation as he said, I set the Sword Emperor as my goal, so I naturally trained in the sword. Unfortunately, the Sword Emperor has already perished. If I can become stronger, I will definitely take revenge for the Sword Emperor. He would never have thought that the demon child in front of him was Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji's death was witnessed by everyone in the world. Zhou Xuanji coldly harumphed and said, The Sword Emperor is nothing. He's still dead. Shengguan Jusu was furious. He said in a low voice, The Sword Emperor did not die a humiliating death. He fought against so many seniors and can be ranked at the peak of history. What do you know? The Sword Emperor was his belief, and he would not allow anyone to insult him. Zhou Xuanji laughed, feeling pleased in his heart. But in Shengguan Jusu's eyes, it was mockery. He dared to be angry but did not dare to say anything. Skyfall. The entire Emperor's Sword Court sank into sorrow. At this moment, Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were overjoyed. Is that true? His height grew at a visible rate. Even Shengguan Jusu, who lived with him day and night, could sense it. He felt that Zhou Xuanji grew taller every day. Half a year later, he looked like he was 6 or 7 years old. At the same time, the Donghan Empire was massacred by the Heavenly Law Army. Blood flowed like a river, and the entire northern wilderness region was alarmed. Facing Spirit Sovereign Yan's brutality, the humans could do nothing. Zhou Xuanji could only hold it in. Another year passed. Zhou Xuanji was 76 years old, but he looked like he was 12 years old. In Shengguan Jusu's eyes, he was a devilish genius. The great Shang Empire was destroyed. Out of the 7 empires, only 5 were left. In the 3rd year of his rebirth, Zhou Xuanji had grown up. Shengguan Jusu's dantian had been healed by the Holy Light Redemption Sword, and he had reached great accomplishment in the Vibrant Raindrop Sword. Late at night, Zhou Xuanji came to the courtyard. Not far away, Shengguan Jusu was still cultivating on a straw mat. Phew! Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and looked up at the night sky. He channeled magic energy into his right arm. He had already recovered his full cultivation, and so was the strength of his body. He was even more powerful than when he was alive. But he felt that it was not enough. Tonight he was going to become a great emperor. Boom! Thunder boomed and billowing dark clouds gathered. Shengguan Jusu opened his eyes in shock. He looked at Zhou Xuanji in astonishment and asked, What are you doing? Somehow he felt that Zhou Xuanji's figure was familiar. Ever since Zhou Xuanji looked more than 12 years old, he had been wearing a mask so that Shengguan Jusu could not recognize his true identity. Zhou Xuanji ignored him. Staring at the thunderclouds, he mumbled, After tonight, the world will worship me as the emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yin, you will die a horrible death. His words made Shengguan Jusu open his eyes wide. Spirit Sovereign Yin. The evil god of the upper realm, the mortal world's greatest enemy. He wanted to kill Spirit Sovereign Yin? Shengguan Jusu rubbed his eyes and looked carefully. He suddenly realized that Zhou Xuanji's back looked so familiar. Who is he? Shenghuan was confused. At this moment, the thunderclouds parted, and a pair of eyes that were even brighter than the moon appeared. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 392. The gigantic eye was so sacred that everyone in the town could see it. What's that? Is Spirit Sovereign Yen coming to kill us? No, it's not moving. Such a horrifying eye. I feel like I'm being seen through. What's going on? Everyone in the town was shocked. Cries of shock sounded out and panic began to spread. In the courtyard, Shenghuan was also dumbfounded. Because he was the closest to Zhou Xuanji, he felt it the most. He could sense an indescribable heavenly might, which made his hair stand on end. He wanted to kneel down and worship. He looked at Zhou Xuanji again and saw that Zhou Xuanji was glowing with a golden light. It was possible that only his figure could be seen. He had already defeated 10 great emperor candidates. There was no need for him to undergo a tribulation. He could become a great emperor directly by pouring fate into him. A wave of majestic fate rushed into his body and tempered his soul. His soul was transforming. This feeling, Zhou Xuanji looked down at his hands and mumbled to himself. He could not hide the excitement in his tone. He could clearly sense that he was becoming more powerful. The Qianxia map's image appeared above his head, faintly discernible. He looked up at the gigantic eye in the night sky and could not help but think about its origin. Is it the heavenly law? Hunyuan Royal City in the royal study. Yang Di, who was writing, suddenly looked up at the night sky outside the window. He frowned deeply and mumbled, "This heavenly might." He stood up and walked out of the study. The man in the woven rush raincoat appeared beside him and said in a deep voice, "Someone is becoming a great emperor." Hearing this, Yang Di's pupils contracted. Becoming a great emperor? He instinctively thought of Spirit Sovereign Yen and the Heavenly Law Army and calmed down. That's right. Many great emperors had already been revived. The man in the woven rush raincoat pinched his fingers and divined. He vomited a mouthful of blood and stumbled backward, slamming into the palace wall. How can it be? First-class great emperor, supreme talent. He cried out in shock. He looked terrified, which made Yang Di frown. Outside the sea, Dao Seeker stood on a small boat amidst the raging waves. He suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the northern wilderness region. Someone is becoming a great emperor? Could it be those heavenly law puppets? Dao Seeker's expression was unsightly. 3 years ago, when he heard about Zhou Xuanji's tragic death, he almost fainted. He had high hopes for Zhou Xuanji, but he failed at the last moment. Now that another person had become a martial monarch, despair surged in his heart. Was this tribulation really unbreakable? At this moment, a meteor streaked across the night sky and fell towards the horizon. Dao Seeker did not notice. He was still in a daze. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen sat on the peak of the mountain and comprehended the power of heavenly law. Looking down, he saw that the entire mountain was filled with heavenly law puppets. There were over 300 of them, and they were all great emperors or great emperors. Every one of them was shining brightly like a deity. Suddenly, all of the heavenly law puppets turned to look in the direction of the Bahan dynasty. Spirit Sovereign Yen opened his eyes and said in bewilderment, "This heavenly might." As the owner of the heavenly path stone, he could feel the northern wilderness region's heavenly might the most. At this moment, he could sense an extremely terrifying heavenly might descending upon the mortal realm, and it was more powerful than any of his heavenly law puppets. He could not help but furrow his brows when he noticed the abnormal behavior of the Heaven's Dao puppets. He stood up and prepared to fly towards the Bahan dynasty, but he thought of something else and sat back down. Although that heavenly might is powerful, it is not enough to threaten me. I have to think of a way to deal with the heavenly palace first. Spirit Sovereign Yen mumbled to himself with murderous intent in his eyes. Ever since he killed all the heavenly guards, the heavenly palace had sensed that something was wrong. Half a year ago, the heavenly palace sent an envoy who was killed by his heavenly law army. He understood that the heavenly palace would send even more powerful beings down to the mortal realm. However, the northern wilderness region was the mortal realm. After those from the upper realm descended, their cultivation would be suppressed to great tribulation scattered immortal. As long as they did not surpass great tribulation scattered immortal, he believed that his heavenly law army was invincible. To prevent the heavenly palace from sending too many powerful beings, he decided to continue creating heavenly law puppets. Creating heavenly law puppets did not come without a price. After coming to the mortal realm, his lifespan was no longer immortal. Every time he created a heavenly law puppet, his lifespan would be consumed. If this continued, he would die sooner or later. Unless he ascended back to the heavenly palace or became the ruler of the mortal realm and controlled the fate of the world. In the entire mortal realm, everyone who reached Great Tribulation scattered immortal could sense the heavenly might when Zhou Xuanji became a great emperor. It was boundless and filled everyone with awe. Zhou Xuanji bathed in the heavenly law fate, and his cultivation broke through to 7th Tribulation scattered immortal straightaway. Somehow, he felt that the world had become so small in his perception. He looked up and could see through the night sky to another world. That world was shrouded in celestial mist, and there were many palaces and pavilions. Many celestial beasts circled in the sky, and many fairies flew around. Each of them was as beautiful as a flower and had an otherworldly aura. If he guessed correctly, that was the heavenly palace. At this moment, in a massive palace in the heavenly palace, hundreds of people with extraordinary auras stood in the palace. The men looked majestic and mighty, while the women were beautiful and noble. The palace was brightly lit, and silver pillars supported the massive palace. It was grand and exquisite like the pillars supporting the sky. Sitting at the main seat was a man dressed in a luxurious silver emperor's robe. He wore a jade crown and looked majestic. Although he looked lazy, he gave off a domineering aura as if he was in control of the world. He was the lord of the heavenly palace, Seiju Qian. Spirit Sovereign Yen betrayed us and has the heavenly law stone. Is there anyone who is willing to descend to eliminate him? Seiju Qian spoke slowly. His expression was calm and he did not take Spirit Sovereign Yen seriously at all. In reality, this was the case. They had already finished discussing other important matters, and if not for a Spirit Sovereign mentioning this, Seiju Qian most likely would not have known. This subordinate is willing to descend to the mortal realm. This fellow is a dog of our Xinyuan family, and he dares to betray us? He must be tired of living. A man dressed in silver Qilin armor stepped out. A crimson halo of light floated behind him, and with his silver hair, he gave off a sharp aura that could pierce through the clouds. As soon as he stepped out, the people in the palace started to become restless. Tiske, who would have thought that Shenyuan Shenhao would choose to descend to the mortal realm? With his strength, it's a waste of his talent to do such a thing. However, why does Spirit Sovereign Yen have the heavenly law stone? This is worth investigating. Spirit Sovereign Yen is seeking death. Back then, his son Ji Xian found out about the crown prince, and now he's committing a crime. How foolish. The northern wilderness is currently in the world epoch, and the Shenyuan family most likely has other plans. Hearing the discussions around him, Xinyuan Shenhao's expression did not change, and he calmly looked at Seiju Qian, waiting for orders. Boom. At that moment, a powerful gust of wind rose up from the ground, causing everyone to look down in shock. They saw that the ground had become transparent, and they could see a golden figure in the stormy night, but they could not make out his appearance. Seiju Qian frowned and said in a low voice, "Great Emperor? Someone in the current northern wilderness can become a great emperor?" The northern wilderness belonged to the heavenly palace, and whenever a great emperor expert appeared, they would immediately sense it and try to rope them in. However, most great emperors did not choose to join the heavenly palace, and they would instead roam the world by themselves. The heavenly palace could not forcefully control a new great emperor, or else they would suffer the wrath of heaven. Chapter 393. All the experts of the heavenly palace stared at the golden figure, curious as to what kind of person he was. Most of the great emperors in the northern wilderness region were very powerful. 10,000 years ago, the Hegemon Sword Emperor ruled over a region, and even the heavenly palace did not dare to offend him. Before, when Shi Shinzong had ascended, the heavenly palace had wanted to forcefully take him in. After all, Shi Shinzong had not become a great emperor yet, so he was not protected by the heavenly law fate. However, they had never thought that the Hegemon Sword Emperor would personally come to ask for him. "Your Majesty, such a genius has appeared in the northern wilderness region, and I'm willing to head there personally. After killing Spirit Sovereign Yen, I'll subdue him." Xinyuan Shenhao cupped his fists again, his voice forceful and filled with confidence. Seiju Qian muttered to himself, "Go." Xinyuan Shenhao did not reveal any joy. He just calmly nodded. It was not only the heavenly palace. Back in the netherworld, Judge Chui and the other Hell Guards could also sense the heavenly might of becoming a great emperor. In the magistrate palace, Magistrate Chui put down his brush and looked out of the palace. He mumbled, "Someone in the northern wilderness region has become a great emperor so quickly. Becoming a martial monarch would allow one to obtain the heavenly Tao's karmic luck, shocking the world and making the gods weep." He understood the northern wilderness region. The human bloodline was not pure, and it was impossible for anyone to become a great emperor. Could it be that other races were going to rise? After all, this was a heaven and earth epoch. He thought of Zhou Xuanji and his eyes flashed as he muttered, "Brat, don't die or else you will let me down." He had invested so many great spirit pills on Zhou Xuanji and did not want to waste them. Within the heavenly law of fate, Zhou Xuanji was still becoming a great emperor. He was originally observing the Sky Hall, but an extremely strong force suppressed his spiritual will down to the mortal realm, and he could no longer observe the sky. He didn't think too much about it, thinking that the heavenly Tao didn't allow it. Boom. The deepest part of his soul suddenly exploded. A strange energy flowed through his bones and finally gathered in his heart. Dong, dong, dong. His heart beat like a war drum once again, strong and powerful, causing his blood to boil. The heavenly law great emperor was above mortals and was on par with immortals and gods. It could enter yin and yang and traverse the 5 elements. Detected that the sword owner has become a heavenly law great emperor. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Celestial Shaker, Dream Devouring True Martial Devil Rinsing. The sword spirit's voice suddenly sounded in his mind, and he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Another celestial shaking sword. The celestial shaking sword was very strong. With the sun-devouring Tiango sword, no one among the great tribulation scattered immortals was a match for him one-on-one. Now that he had obtained the celestial shaking sword, how could he not be happy? In these 3 years he had obtained a total of 5 amethyst divine swords. That's right, they were all amethyst rank. They were the Screaming Sword, the Perseverance Sword, the Dragon Perishing Sword, the Clamoring Sword, and the Flying Swan Sword. Information about the new godly sword appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Dream Devouring True Martial Demon Sweeping Level. Shocking immortal description. The true martial divine force can devour dreams and exterminate demons. Demons howl as soon as this sword is used. Be careful when using it. The description was not detailed enough, but it seemed to be very impressive. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think about even higher grade legendary swords. Ordinary or iron, bronze, silver, gold, amethyst, glorious gold, heavenly soul, intimidating spirit, celestial shaking, god slaying, Armageddon. Could the god slaying sword really slay gods? The Armageddon divine sword could destroy a world with one strike? He was looking forward to it. At that moment, the gigantic eyes in the night sky suddenly opened wide. A halo of light descended from the sky and landed on Zhou Xuanji's body. Boom. The area within a radius of 300 meters was flattened. Shengguan Jisoo and some commoners were knocked unconscious. This is fate? Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He could sense that his fate had doubled. However, this was only the beginning. Numerous halos of light descended and fused into his body. There were 9 halos in total, which made his fate reach its peak. The entire human race's fate added together could not compare to his. The main thing was that the human race was about to die. Faintly he understood the true meaning of this. Heavenly law great emperors were divided into 9 grades. 9th grade was the weakest, while 1st grade was the most powerful. Great emperors had the emperor's might that could suppress mortals. The higher the grade, the more powerful the emperor's might. A 1st grade great emperor could suppress an 8th grade great emperor. Emperor's might was the signature divine ability of a great emperor. Those heavenly law puppets were not their true bodies and did not have the emperor's might. Otherwise, Zhou Xuanji could not have killed so many great emperor candidates. The powerful radiance dissipated, and Zhou Xuanji revealed himself. His mask had already turned into ashes. His eyes glowed with a purple light, which looked devilish and oppressive. The purple Tai Chi diagram on his forehead changed. 9 tiny patterns appeared at the edge of the Tai Chi diagram. They were like 9 tiny swords with their tips pointing outwards. He levitated in the air, and his body gave off a faint silver radiance. Under the night sky he looked like a lofty god. He looked up and activated his emperor's might. Tonight I, Zhou Xuanji, will become a great emperor in the name of the Sword Emperor. The human race will regard me as the emperor, and the northern wilderness will regard me as the leader. Spirit Sovereign Yen, you are dead for sure. His voice resounded across the northern wilderness region and beyond, stunning everyone in the night. The world was in an uproar. The Sword Emperor did not die and he became a great emperor? How could it be? Under the night sky among the waves, Tao Seeker opened his eyes wide. His body trembled and an unprecedented joy surged into his heart. He became a great emperor. How could it be? How could it be? He mumbled. He suddenly raised his head and laughed out loud. Even the thunder and lightning could not scare away his excitement. He was not the only one who was excited. The entire human race was in an uproar. Countless commoners got up from their beds, and countless cultivators were roused from their meditation. The Sword Emperor was not dead, and he became a great emperor. The destruction of the Southern Han Empire and Great Shang Empire had caused the human race to fall into despair. This time, Zhou Xuanji once again brought hope to the human race with his domineering ways. The Sword Emperor became a great emperor. Ah, am I dreaming? I knew it. He couldn't have died. He's the top cultivator in the world, the most powerful human. How could he die? Screw Lu Wuji. From tonight onwards, Zhou Xuanji is the most powerful human in history. Did I hear wrongly? Really? The heavens have eyes. They did not kill the human race. Everyone in the world cried tears of joy, and even overseas were discussing this. Ever since Spirit Sovereign Yen descended, the humans overseas had it even harder. They were surrounded and attacked by the other races, and their despair was far greater than the humans in the northern wilderness region. They did not expect the most powerful human to become a great emperor. At Skyfall, Jiang Shui, Daoya Old Man, Zhou Shaoxian, Xian Xianghua, and the others were overjoyed. Cheers came from the foot of the mountain, and even the sea of clouds could not block them. Mom. Father became a great emperor. Zhou Shaoxian cried out in excitement, as though she had become a great emperor. Xiao Jinghong gripped his sword and said with admiration, "Revered teacher's talent is unrivaled. Becoming a great emperor in just 3 years of rebirth." Xian Xianghua was in awe. She had been reborn so many times, but why had she not become a great emperor? She sighed, but she felt even more proud. This was the man she valued. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and sighed in amazement. Shin, if you knew this in the underworld, how happy would you be? I'm sure you did not expect your son to achieve such great things. While everyone in the world was exhilarated and overjoyed. But Juedi Cliff was extremely silent. Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on the peak with his fists tightly clenched and veins bulged on his forehead. His eyes almost spat fire. Why was that brat not dead yet? Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 394. So what if you're a martial monarch? My heavenly law army will tear you to pieces. Spirit Sovereign Yen said as he gnashed his teeth. No wonder Zhou Xuanji's corpse did not have a complete soul 3 years ago. What a good trick. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The Heavenly Hall's threat was imminent, and Zhou Xuanji, the cockroach, had become a great emperor, making him feel quite annoyed. He looked up at the stormy sky and murmured, "Looks like I have no choice but to create you." He raised his right hand and continued to create heavenly law puppets. At the bottom of the mountain, Wang Ho's body suddenly trembled. The other heavenly puppets were like wooden pillars not moving at all. Wang Ho was very eye-catching. Spirit Sovereign Yen was filled with rage. He wanted to create even more powerful heavenly law puppets, so he didn't notice Marquis's abnormality. 3 years had passed, and his absolute control over the heavenly law puppets had already blinded his heart. On the other side of Juedi Cliff, Bai Hao Isin stood up and paced back and forth, continuously cursing. All kinds of vulgar words came one after another. It could be summed up in one word. *CK. He was already surprised that Zhou Xuanji had not died, and he had never thought that this fellow would become a great emperor. Becoming a martial emperor was extremely difficult, not to mention that the current human race's bloodline was not pure, making it impossible for them to become a martial emperor. What? He refused to accept this. He felt that Zhou Xuanji was the child of fate, the child of heavenly law. He had become a great emperor before his 80th birthday? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and jealousy grew in his heart. In the end, all his emotions turned into a sigh. Maybe he can really defeat Spirit Sovereign Yen? Bai Hao Isin thought to himself. He did not want to stay humiliated by Spirit Sovereign Yen. Shengguan Jisu woke up from his dream. He had a dream. He dreamt that the Sword Emperor, whom he worshipped the most, had actually taken him as a disciple and imparted him sword techniques. Every day he would be able to admire the Sword Emperor's grace and was truly blessed. He reluctantly opened his eyes and saw a blue sky instead of the familiar straw hut. He suddenly recalled the memory before he fainted. He did a carp flip and jumped up. Where am I? He looked around in confusion and found himself in the middle of a forest. Not far away were the corpses of 6 demonic wolves. He was shocked to find that he was holding a token in his hand. The word Emperor was engraved on it. At the same time, there was a note with a sentence written on it. With this token you can enter the Emperor's sword court. As if struck by lightning, he froze on the spot. After a long while, he muttered to himself, could it be that he is? His eyes widened and his breathing quickened. He was so excited that it was like he was on steroids. Hunyuan Royal City. Standing on the top of the palace, Sunlight Emperor looked at the vast universe and remained silent for a long time. Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor had a massive impact on his heart. He fell into an unprecedented state of confusion. All along he had thought that he was the most powerful in the world. The battle before Zhou Xuanji's death had made him doubt himself. Fortunately, Zhou Xuanji had died. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to make a comeback in just 3 years. He took a deep breath and turned to look at Juedi Cliff. His eyes became determined. As the former number 1 in the world, he had never fought with Spirit Sovereign Yen during the human race's calamity. Even the Hunyuan Empire was full of complaints about him. This time, he intended to burn his boats. Either I die or I become a great emperor. Sunlight Emperor murmured to himself. He turned into a golden light and leaped into the sky, disappearing into the horizon of the imperial city. While the northern wilderness was shocked by Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor, an uninvited guest came from overseas. A red-haired lady walked out from the sea and walked toward the beach. She wore a white dress and was drenched from head to toe. Her figure was perfectly outlined, and her face was cold and beautiful. Her eyes were indifferent. This is the northern wilderness region? The place where he was born? It's just us. She mumbled to herself with a slight frown. The spiritual chi is ordinary, but the fate here is chaotic. It's more chaotic than any mortal realm. Seems like it's a wonderful time. Interesting. But I must find your corpse. She raised her hands, and they turned into countless blood-colored bats that flew everywhere. After she left, the ocean turned blood red. It was a horrifying sight. In the faraway Juedi Cliff, Spirit Sovereign Yen opened his eyes suddenly. He frowned and mumbled, who infiltrated the northern wilderness region? Their aura is so strange and I can't predict their fate. It shouldn't be the Heavenly Hall. This isn't their style. The Heavenly Hall was domineering. They had always been high profile in the mortal realm under their control. He turned to look at the Heavenly Law puppets below with a proud smile. 500 Heavenly Law puppets, and all of them had the potential of a great emperor candidate. Especially the 2 at the front. The human race's first human emperor, Emperor Xia. The demon race's supreme ruler, Great Emperor Wuwang. The 2 of them stood at the front of the Heavenly Law army, their auras suppressing the crowd. Seeing them, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heroic spirit was reignited. No matter who came, they had to die. Boom. A pillar of light descended from the sky, breaking through the rumbling thunderclouds and landing on the peak of a mountain hundreds of meters away. It caused the mountain to shake and dust flew into the air. Cracks extended down the mountain, covering the entire mountain. You must be Spirit Sovereign Yen. I am Xinyuan Shinhao. Either I kill you or you die here. A cold voice came from within the pillar of light, and a domineering aura shook Juedi Cliff. In the distance, Baihao Isin opened his eyes and said in shock, I never thought that the Heavenly Hall's second-class Great Emperor would come. Xinyuan Shinhao was a famous genius of the Heavenly Hall, and he was also a divine weapon of the Heavenly Hall. He came from another mortal realm and inherited the Xinyuan clan's bloodline. He had been invincible for 20,000 years, and he had ascended after becoming a great emperor. He had obtained Seiju Tian's love. Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression was somewhat unnatural. As a subordinate spirit sovereign of the Xinyuan clan, Xinyuan Shinhao was like the heavens to him, an unreachable existence. He never thought that the Heavenly Hall would send such a peerless genius to kill him. However, he did not panic. He stood up and loudly laughed. Xinyuan Shinhao? You don't understand the situation? 500 Heavenly Law puppets rushed into the sky and surrounded Xinyuan Shinhao. The pillar of light dissipated and Xinyuan Shinhao appeared. He held a halberd and stood proudly. He swept his gaze over the Heavenly Law puppets and instantly frowned. There were so many great emperors. Even the weakest had the talent of a great emperor. Before he could speak again, the Heavenly Law army attacked him. Boom. Half an hour later, Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on the peak of the mountain with a disdainful smile. At the foot of the mountain, Xianyuan Shenhao half knelt on the ground. His armor was covered with blood, and he was surrounded by heavenly law puppets. Emperor Xia stood behind him, grabbing his hair. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Xianyuan Shenhao, you didn't expect this, did you? Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled disdainfully. Great Emperor Wuwang stood behind him, protecting him in case he suffered a sneak attack. Xianyuan Shenhao said coldly, Insect, you only borrowed the power of the heavenly law. Do you think you can overthrow the heavenly hall with just these few puppets? If he had not descended into the mortal realm and his cultivation had been sealed, how could he have lost? Haha, you won't be able to see the day I overthrow the heavenly hall. Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled disdainfully. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed in disdain, feeling extremely good. So what if he was a second-class great emperor and a peerless genius? He was still kneeling in front of him. You won't even live past today. A cold voice resounded through the sky, as if countless people were shouting at the same time. Spirit Sovereign Yen looked around in shock. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 395. Zhou Xuanji. Get out here. Spirit Sovereign Yen furiously roared. Just from the voice he knew who this person was. However, he could not sense Zhou Xuanji's aura, so he did not know where that fellow was. Xianyuan Shenhao frowned. He could not find this person either. Could it be that this person was the mortal who succeeded in becoming a great emperor not long ago? 1,000 meters away, Zhou Xuanji appeared on a mountain. He held two swords in his hands. They were the sun-devouring Tiango sword and the dream-devouring true martial devil-sweeping sword. The dream-devouring true martial's devil-vanquishing sword was a broadsword. Its blade was bright red as if it had been forged with fresh blood. His Tri-Sun Flame Chi robe was no longer there. He wore a white robe and his black hair casually draped over his shoulders. Under the thunder clouds, his white robe fluttered. The aura of a sword Dao Great Emperor shook the wind and clouds. Sensing his gaze, Spirit Sovereign Yen turned around abruptly. When he saw Zhou Xuanji clearly, he laughed furiously and said, Brat, you really did not die. Very good, you came to me again. Enraged, he immediately ordered 100 heavenly law puppets led by war god Xiling to attack. The 100 quasi-emperors and great sovereigns moved at the same time, stirring up a terrifying gale that shook the mountains. Zhou Xuanji's black hair danced wildly in the wind. He raised his eyelids and his violet eyes looked incredibly devilish. A 9-sword violet Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead, and an indomitable aura exploded out from him. Spirit Sovereign Yen, I will let you feel the terror and despair of all living beings. He said softly, but his voice was like thunder that resounded throughout Juadi Cliff. War God Xiling punched out, causing the air to explode with a deafening sound. 9 sword souls appeared behind Zhou Xuanji. Sky-dominating divine sword, soul eater / tempest / 100-mile flying sword, vibrant raindrops sword, moonlit wind sword dance, 10,000 ultimate steps, trisource vein severing sword, 36 paths jade shao sword art. Each of the 9 sword souls had their own postures and auras. One of the sword souls disappeared into thin air and then condensed again. Puchi, war god Xiling was directly cut into 2 halves, turning into countless sparks that drifted away, no longer existing. Zhou Xuanji started to walk down the mountain. He did not walk quickly or slowly, and his gaze was fixed on Spirit Sovereign Yen. This scene caused Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart to jump. So powerful. Many great emperor candidates and great emperors leapt at him, and the sword souls behind Zhou Xuanji continuously shot out. Sword light continuously flashed, and an icy coldness filled the heavens and earth. He didn't lift his sword with both hands. With just his sword soul he was a sword emperor. Not a single heavenly law puppet could withstand a single strike from him. After taking 10 steps, the 100 heavens path puppets were all destroyed. Silence. The world was silent. Spirit Sovereign Yen and Xianyuan Shenhao were both given a big fright, and they looked at Zhou Xuanji in a daze. This was especially true for Xianyuan Shenhao. He knew how powerful the war god 4 spirits and the heavenly law puppets were. Previously he had fought 30 heavenly law puppets alone and was defeated. This person actually killed 100 venerables in 10 steps. How is this possible? How can there be such a powerful existence in the mortal world? Could it be that he is a true god that has descended to the mortal world? He swallowed his saliva and his heart was in turmoil. If he was at the peak of his cultivation he could easily do it. The key was that this was the mortal realm. The heavenly law would suppress one's cultivation. Little brat. Don't be so arrogant. Spirit Sovereign Yen roared furiously, and 300 heavenly law puppets blocked in front of him. In the distance, Baihao Isin hid behind a hill and carefully watched. This is too ridiculous. He couldn't believe his eyes, he thought with trepidation. Zhou Xuanji's expression did not change as he slowly walked toward the foot of the hill. With both swords in his hands, his white robe fluttered in the wind. His eyes were so indifferent, filled with absolute confidence and a domineering aura that looked down on all enemies. The sun-devouring Tiango sword and dream-devouring heavenly martial devil-rinsing sword were both immortal-shaking legendary swords. With the world's power, no great tribulation scattered immortal could withstand them. After becoming a great emperor, he was reborn. His speed and reaction were much faster than before. Together with the sword soul's sharp attacks, it was not difficult for him to kill the heavenly law puppets instantly. 18 heavenly law puppets appeared in all directions around Zhou Xuanji simultaneously. They cast their divine abilities and prepared to kill him. Zhou Xuanji smiled with extreme disdain. Countless sword shadows appeared out of nowhere and tore the 18 heavenly law puppets into pieces, turning them into ashes. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. The Sword Soul's Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow covered a huge area, and its destructive power was just as horrifying. The 9 emperors of the Sword's Way followed. Countless sword chi pressed toward him from all directions, and the hill under his feet was pulverized immediately. But he did not hesitate. He continued to walk in the air. The 9 sword souls flashed and blocked all the sword chi of the 9 emperors. At the same time he charged toward them with an even more domineering aura. Instant kill. 9 emperors of the Sword's Way disperse. One after another, the heavenly law puppets were killed and exploded like fireworks. It was a magnificent sight. Zhou Xuanji's robe fluttered in the violent gale. He walked forward elegantly without raising the swords in his hands. His sharp eyes never blinked, and his murderous intent was locked onto Spirit Sovereign Yen. How can it be? How can he be so powerful? Spirit Sovereign Yan's face was dark. His body trembled slightly, and his heart was filled with fear. Shenyuan Shenhao's expression was complicated, and his mind was blank. This person was already so powerful in the mortal realm. If he went to the upper realm, he did not dare to imagine. Zhou Xuanji, he remembered this name. He would never forget this scene for the rest of his life. Before a cliff in the east, a figure was watching the battle in silence. It was Yang Di. Yang Di's face was livid, and he clenched his fists in his sleeves. The man in the woven rush raincoat appeared beside him and sighed, "This boy has already soared into the sky. He is no longer on the same level as you." The heart-wrenching words made Yang Di's body tremble. Can one become so powerful after becoming a great emperor? He mumbled to himself, his tone filled with reluctance. How could he defeat Zhou Xuanji? The man in the woven rush raincoat shook his head. He wanted to say that Zhou Xuanji could not be so powerful even if he became a great emperor. Because Zhou Xuanji was a first-class great emperor. The number of first-class great emperors in the human race could be counted on one's fingers. Even a first-class great emperor should not have such battle power. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? Spirit Sovereign Yen gnashed his teeth and roared furiously. His face was hideous and he was extremely furious. He did not believe that an ordinary person could have such power. Even if he became a great emperor, he could not be so powerful. Could this guy be the reincarnation of a powerhouse from the upper realm? Although Baihao Isin was in such a sorry state, there were many people more powerful than him in the upper realm. Could he be the reincarnation of a true god? At the thought of this, the fear in his heart grew even stronger. I'm Zhou Xuanji, the one and only Sword Emperor. Zhou Xuanji laughed coldly. The murderous intent in his words froze the heavens and earth. After 100 steps, the 300 heavenly law puppets were all destroyed. The Qianxia map provided him with magic energy madly. The power of the world surrounded his body, forming a visible gale. The 9 sword souls were still standing proudly behind him, looking majestic and mighty. Spirit Sovereign Yen was furious. He sent Emperor Xia to lead 50 heavenly law puppets to kill Zhou Xuanji. Shenyuan Shenhao escaped from danger because of this, and he collapsed onto the ground pathetically. Emperor Xia raised his right arm, and a radiant sun appeared on his palm. It had a diameter of 3,000 meters. He swung his right hand, and the majestic radiant sun smashed toward Zhou Xuanji. The sword flashed. The radiant sun was extinguished and Emperor Xia was killed. He could not even withstand a single blow. Zhou Xuanji laughed condescendingly as he got closer and closer to Spirit Sovereign Yen. He was not in a hurry to kill Spirit Sovereign Yen. He wanted Spirit Sovereign Yen to experience the helplessness of death. Why is it like this? Why? Spirit Sovereign Yen panicked completely. Even Emperor Xia could not defeat Zhou Xuanji. He did not have many heavenly law puppets left to rely on. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 396. Zhou Xuanji took 8 steps in the air, and the 50 great emperors and great emperors all dissipated. No one could block a single strike from him. The wind and waves were like dragons, and the thunder and lightning were mighty. His white robe was not damaged, nor was there a speck of dust on it. Spirit Sovereign Yen was so scared that he felt like his guts were going to explode. He immediately used his hands to continue drawing the power of heavenly law to create heavenly law puppets. You overestimate yourself. The current you is no match for me. No matter how many puppets you hire, you will not be able to escape death. Zhou Xuanji looked at Spirit Sovereign Yen condescendingly as he laughed. He had not even used his full strength, and Spirit Sovereign Yen was already afraid. How boring. He crossed 30 meters with a single step, increasing his pace. Seeing this, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart thumped, and his scalp turned numb. Heavens! Please bestow me with tyranny. Spirit Sovereign Yen roared furiously. He couldn't care less about the loss of his lifespan. He had to escape this calamity. Great Emperor Wu Wang and Lu Wuji led the remaining heavenly law puppets and charged at Zhou Xuanji ferociously. They did not know fear and only knew how to obey orders. Only Marquis did not move. Seeing Marquis's abnormality, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart trembled, but he didn't have time to think. Boom, 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 bolts of lightning descended. Next, numerous heavenly law puppets flew out and swarmed toward Zhou Xuanji. With the 9 sword souls, Zhou Xuanji was extremely domineering. He walked forward step by step without looking back. The heavenly law puppets were destroyed one after another. Their divine abilities could not even touch Zhou Xuanji. The sword chi was like a rainbow, and the ground below shook violently. Billowing dust swept into the distance like a sandstorm, connecting with the thunderclouds and covering the sky. Seeing this berserk scene, Bai Hao Yisin gulped. 2F** King Strong. At this moment he suddenly wanted to become sworn brothers with Zhou Xuanji. With Zhou Xuanji, did he still need to self-destruct in the northern wilderness region? No. I am the heartless great emperor. You can't be such a coward. How could he have the idea of joining him just because he couldn't beat him? Zhou Xuanji, you and I can work together. The Sky Palace is your true enemy. Spirit Sovereign Yen said with gritted teeth. Seeing that the heavenly law puppets could do nothing to Zhou Xuanji, he was extremely afraid. Even his soul was trembling. Zhou Xuanji stared at him and said calmly, I want to kill you. There's no point in killing me. The heavenly hall will still come down. I just want to kill you. Can you be a little more rational? I can be your helper. It's impossible for you to stop the Sky Palace. But I still want to kill you. Are you crazy? Do you know how many experts are hidden in the Heavenly Palace? With world reincarnation activated, how could Bai Hao Yisin's self-destruction hurt him? Staring at Spirit Sovereign Yen, Zhou Xuanji said with a disdainful smile, Now, a passerby wants to commit suicide, or should I kill you with my own hands? What are your last words before you die? Spirit Sovereign Yen was already at the end of his rope when he created the heavenly law puppets crazily. After Bai Hao Yisin's self-destruction, he lost all his combat power. At this moment he was no different from a dead dog. Spirit Sovereign Yen gritted his teeth and said, Zhou Xuanji, you will regret this. One day you will understand that my ambition was right. The northern wilderness region humans should not have been saved. The bloodline of the northern wilderness humans is impure because of that senior's mighty power. With your power, you should have ascended and left the human race, but you chose to be involved in this. The northern wilderness humans have produced so many powerful cultivators. Have you seen any of them return? The more he spoke, the angrier he became, and he coughed up blood continuously. Who is that senior? Zhou Xuanji asked expressionlessly. Spirit Sovereign Yen did not reply but said with gritted teeth, I am the chosen one, protected by the heavenly law. I cannot, PFFTD. Zhou Xuanji swung his sword with his left hand and decapitated Spirit Sovereign Yen. Boom. Spirit Sovereign Yan's body radiated with a powerful rainbow radiance and soared into the clouds. A rock leaped out and flew to the top of the sky. The heavenly law stone. Zhou Xuanji wanted to grab it instinctively, but a sense of danger came to his mind and he stopped instinctively. He trusted his instincts. So he watched as the heavenly lost stone flew into the sky. The thunderclouds parted and a gigantic black hole appeared. Looking at the hole, Zhou Xuanji felt a chill in his heart. At this moment, a silhouette came from afar. It was Yang Di. He chased after the heavenly lost stone. Soon he caught hold of the heavenly lost stone and was brought toward the black hole by it. He looked back at Zhou Xuanji with a calm expression and determined eyes. Zhou Xuanji, you have not truly fought with this emperor. This emperor is the top cultivator in the world. It was like this in the past, now, and in the future. He said proudly, regaining his domineering attitude. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Little brother, you are playing with fire. Even he felt threatened by it. How could Yang Di resist? Shortly after, under his gaze, Yang Di and the heavenly lost stone disappeared into the black hole. You were smart to not grab the heavenly lost stone. A cold voice came. Zhou Xuanji turned around and saw Marquis looking at him. Yes. Chapter 397. This heavenly law puppet can speak? It has its own consciousness? Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He stared at Marquis and asked, You have your own consciousness? Marquis maintained his silhouette and replied calmly, Back then when I became a great emperor I played some tricks but I did not expect to use them. The other great emperors and great emperors might have them too, but they allowed it silently. If those ancient powerhouses were still alive, their cultivation must have reached a horrifying level. How could they not sense that someone created their heavenly law puppets? After all, the heavenly law puppets and the original body were connected by fate. Allowed it silently? Could it be that what Spirit Sovereign Yen said was true? The northern wilderness humans have an unspeakable secret? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. Those powerhouses allowed Spirit Sovereign Yen to slaughter the humans. It was really disappointing. The image of the sages in his eyes was like a dream. Marquis nodded and said, The humans today are not the descendants of Emperor Xia. Zhou Xuanji frowned even more. He had heard about this before. Back then, Lu Wuji ascended out of anger because of this. The current human ancestor of the northern wastelands is still alive, but he has already fallen into the evil path, and is now a source of bad luck. His existence will affect the destiny of his descendants, and as time goes by, everyone will follow him into the evil path and harm the many heavens. Do you understand? Marquis' words made Zhou Xuanji fall into silence. A while later, he said, The sins of the ancestors must be cleansed by the blood of the descendants? This is just an excuse for your helplessness. You are afraid. Why should the current human race be responsible for their ancestors from more than 100,000 years ago? They could not choose their birth. Could this be fate? Marquis smiled and said, You are right. That's why I'm here. I wanted to wait for an opportunity, but I did not expect you to rise so quickly. You really impressed me. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow slightly and felt warmth in his heart. Marquis was indeed the most powerful person in the history of the human race. Daoya old man was right. This guy was indeed the most domineering existence in the history of the human race. To be honest, I wanted to save you when you were fighting back then. But I saw that you knew the celestial devil rebirth technique, so I did not help. The person who created this energy technique was my old friend. It's a pity that he fell into the evil path because of love and was doomed eternally. Marquis sighed endlessly as he spoke. He lamented, Only those who are deeply in love can master this technique. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think of Xian Xianghua. Who is that person? Who tampered with the human bloodline? Zhou Xuanji asked as he looked at Marquis. He felt an unprecedented interest in human history. Those seemingly dead people were actually controlling this world. Wang Ho replied, That northern wilderness human's ancestor was called the demonic emperor. As for who tampered with the northern wilderness human bloodline, I'm not sure either, only that his surname was Ren. The demonic emperor. Could it be the master of the demonic emperor bloodline? Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. As for the person with the surname Ren, he had no way of contacting him. From what he knew, there didn't seem to be anyone with the surname Ren who was particularly strong. The heavenly palace is not scary, the scary ones are those who want to kill the humans of the northern wilderness. I also belong to the northern wilderness, but I have already broken through the restrictions of my race, so I don't have to worry about anything. However, you are different. Your path of growth will be filled with difficulties. Are you ready? Wang Ho continued. His tone was solemn as if he was passing on his last words. Zhou Xuanji replied, I've already prepared it. Along the way he had already encountered a lot of difficulties. What's your plan? He asked instead. Spirit Sovereign Yen was dead, and the heavenly law stone had disappeared. Wang Ho regained his freedom. Wang Ho said with a smile, I'm just a remnant soul. My life and death have nothing to do with me. I plan to investigate some things in the northern wilderness region. The appearance of the heavenly law stone has already caused great chaos in the northern wilderness region, and the heavenly law has taken it back. That guy overestimated himself and chased after the heavenly law stone just now, so he will be in a miserable state. However, I'm curious who gave him the heavenly law stone. With Spirit Sovereign Yan's capability, he could not have obtained the heavenly law stone. There are too many mysteries in this mortal realm. You're on your own. After that he turned around and left. Zhou Xuanji did not stop him. He looked at the direction in which Wang Ho left and was in deep thought. The thunderclouds dispersed, and the black hole disappeared as well. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and channeled his magic energy to draw upon the power of the heavens and earth to send a message to the world. Spirit Sovereign Yin and the Heavenly Law Army have been killed by me, Zhou Xuanji. All races should stop fighting and rest. The crisis is not over yet. The heavenly palace behind Spirit Sovereign Yin will descend soon. Hearing this, the world was shocked. Immense joy exploded in every corner of the world, including overseas. Without Spirit Sovereign Yin, what was the point of the other races fighting for the position of the main character? The entire world began cheering the Sword Emperor's name. Countless people cried tears of joy, and some were bawling for their dead relatives and friends. Bahan Empire. In a city, Shangguan Jisu and the woman in the red dress stood in front of the gate of a residence. The surrounding streets were in a frenzy. Countless people were roaring, cheering, and crying. Shangguan Jisu and the woman were stunned. The love between a man and a woman was not greater than life and death. He did it. Shangguan Jisu's expression was complicated. He was not surprised, because he had long felt that Zhou Xuanji had a chance to win. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji was invincible and omnipotent. He had witnessed Zhou Xuanji's rebirth, and he felt a sense of accomplishment. The world is at peace now. You don't have to work so hard to cultivate anymore. I won't force you anymore, the woman in the red dress said. The woman in the red dress had a complicated look in her eyes. The two had been in love for many years after all. Recalling how high-spirited Shangguan Jisu was, she could not help but fall into a daze. Shangguan Jisu gave a brilliant smile and said, No, I will work even harder than before. Thank you for taking care of me for the past 3 years. I will not come back anymore. I hope you can find a good partner. After that he turned around and left. The woman in the red dress was stunned. She took 2 steps forward and asked, Where are you going? Shangguan Jisu held onto the sheath and waved it. He did not speak or look back. The past had been severed by his sword. After spending 3 years with Zhou Xuanji, his heart had become broad-minded and changed. He was no longer obsessed with love. He wanted to become someone who could support the heavens and earth like Zhou Xuanji. Supporting the world with the sword. Saving the world with the sword. Looking at his determined back view, the woman in the red dress fell into a daze. She suddenly felt a little regretful. All her emotions could not be turned into words to ask him to stay. She felt like there was a fishbone stuck in her throat. At Juedi Cliff, Zhou Xuanji came up to Xinyuan Shenhao and took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword to heal him. He could sense Xinyuan Shenhao's Great Emperor aura. This brat was a second-class Great Emperor. Although he was not as good as him, he was still a devilish cultivator. Why did you save me? Xinyuan Shenhao sat up and asked with a complicated expression. Before he descended into the mortal realm, he promised Sei Jutian that he would subdue Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji stood before him and looked down at him. I just wanted to save you. Do I need a reason? A second-class Great Emperor as a sword slave? Was that cool? Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 398. He just wanted to save her, did he need a reason? Xinyuan Shenhao listened silently, not knowing what to say. After a while, Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword and was prepared to leave. Aren't you going to ask about my background? Xinyuan Shenhao could not help but ask. Zhou Xuanji's casual attitude made him feel humiliated. Am I that unbearable? One had to know that in the heavenly hall he got whatever he wanted. Even Sei Jutian had to treat him with respect. Zhou Xuanji stopped and asked, You are from the heavenly hall, right? I know. Xinyuan Shenhao didn't give up. He said, I came to capture you and put you under heavenly hall's control. Zhou Xuanji looked back at him indifferently and said, You are not a match for me. His heart was pierced. Xinyuan Shenhao was so angry that he coughed up blood. He struggled to stand up. If I can defeat you, will you come with me? He looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked with determination. He had personally witnessed how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. It was the first time he had seen a seventh tribulation scattered immortal with such power. He must rope in such a prodigy for the Sky Palace. Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, "What if you lose?" Xinyuan Shenhao fell silent. From the looks of things, it was impossible for him to defeat Zhou Xuanji in the northern wilderness region. You're a second-grade great sovereign. Is there anyone in the heavenly palace with a higher talent than you? Zhou Xuanji asked. Hearing this, an arrogant expression appeared on Xinyuan Shenhao's face. He said proudly, "No. Apart from me, the most talented person is only a fourth-grade great sovereign." Experts who had surpassed the fourth-grade great sovereign realm looked down on the heaven palace. "Follow me. I'm a class 1 great sovereign. When I ascend, even the heavenly palace will have to submit to me," Zhou Xuanji said as he raised his brow. His words were domineering and did not take the heavenly hall seriously at all. First-class great emperor. Xinyuan Shenhao fell silent again. Zhou Xuanji leaped up and left swiftly. He wanted to subdue Xinyuan Shenhao, but he wasn't in a hurry. This kind of heaven's chosen would definitely not go back so easily, because he had been defeated too badly earlier. This fellow would definitely challenge him again in the future. There was still a long way to go, so he had to loosen the reins only to grasp better. No hurry, no hurry. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? Xinyuan Shenhao muttered to himself, clenching his fists. The previous battle was too shocking. He would never forget it for the rest of his life. After leaving Juedi Cliff, Zhou Xuanji stopped. "Come out." Just as he finished speaking, the man in the raincoat appeared out of thin air in front of him. This kid, the man in the woven rush raincoat, felt quite startled. He had never thought that Zhou Xuanji's perception would reach such a level. He opened his mouth and said, "Sunlight Emperor is stubborn and doomed. I want to follow you and assist you. What do you think?" Zhou Xuanji said with interest. "Oh? What do you want and how can you help me? Weren't you very arrogant before? When I fought Huangquan Drake King, you said that I would definitely die. What about now?" He was secretly pleased, but he didn't show it. After becoming a great emperor, he no longer cared about the man in the woven rush raincoat. It was not an exaggeration to say that he did not care about anyone in the entire northern wilderness region. Only his wife was an exception. "I just want the human race to prosper and maintain its position as the main character of the world. I can do whatever you want me to do, but as a tribulation executive, I can't attack the people of the world. I can't even have physical contact with them," the man in the raincoat said honestly. He was still very confident. Compared to Dao Seeker, he knew more about the northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought and did not give an answer immediately. The man in the woven rush raincoat took a deep breath and said, "I can reveal a shocking piece of news to you now. A person from the upper world who doesn't belong to the heavenly palace has already infiltrated the northern wilderness region. Her strength is at 9 tribulation scattered immortal, the peak of the mortal world." Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Who is she?" The man in the raincoat did not hide anything. This person from the upper realm was called Xiao Hongjun. She was an evil woman with a lot of sins. Even the heavenly hall could not do anything to her. The man in the woven rush raincoat did not know the reason why she descended into the mortal world. However, according to him, Xiao Hongjun was a greater threat than the heavenly hall. It was said that no matter where this devil went, he would bring misery and suffering. His father was a leading figure in the upper realm's devil path and was as powerful as an immortal. "Alright, you can follow me from now on. I want you to investigate the whereabouts of the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline." As for Xiao Hongjun, he did not want to care about her for now. At least for now, Xiao Hongjun did not act recklessly. He didn't want to create enmity for no reason. The hatred between the heavenly palace and the ancestors of the human race was already deep enough. "Alright." The man in the raincoat was straightforward and left immediately. After he disappeared, Zhou Xuanji remembered something. "I forgot to get this guy to show his true colors. He's always acting mysterious and acting like a villain." Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. After that, he flew towards Skyfall. At the same time, the human sanctums and empires began to take action. Previously, because of Spirit Sovereign Yen, they could only hide. But now, they had to regain control of their territories. The restless demons all returned home in fear and did not dare to harass the humans. The human race had a great emperor. Every time everyone thought about this, they would be shocked. In the past, they could only listen to legends. But now there were existences that surpassed legends. The entire world was discussing Zhou Xuanji. He defeated Lu Wuji, Wang Ho, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, War God Xiling, Emperor Xia, Great Emperor Wuwang, Buddha Ghost Emperor, and so on before he ascended. Those who had shaken history could not defeat Zhou Xuanji even if they all worked together. This was too horrifying. No one doubted it because Spirit Sovereign Yin had already died in Zhou Xuanji's hands. 3 days later, Songhai Ziggurat began publishing a biography, The Era of the Sword Emperor. This book recorded all of Zhou Xuanji's deeds since he was young. It described Zhou Xuanji as the most powerful great emperor in history. To suck up to Zhou Xuanji, Songhai Ziggurat distributed this book for free. They distributed millions of copies every day, and it quickly became popular among the humans. On Skyfall, the disciples were scattered all over the mountain to practice their swords. As they practiced, they discussed excitedly. They had been excited for a few days, waiting for Zhou Xuanji's return. Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor made Emperor Sword Court the most powerful sect in the northern wilderness region. In the future, when they traveled the world, they would be very proud. Little did they know that their grand teacher had already returned to the summit. Zhou Xuanji gathered everyone together. Qin Bantian and Meng Tianlang had also returned. Other than Jiang Shui, Daoya Old Man, and Xian Xianghua, everyone knelt before him, each more excited than the last. Zhou Xuanji sat on a stone bench and said with a smile, "Get up." Everyone was shocked. Just by sitting there and doing nothing, he gave them an immense pressure. He was more majestic than anyone they had ever seen in their lives. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and smiled. He was also shocked in his heart. This is a heavenly law great emperor? Tell me about Emperor Sword Court's situation first. Zhou Xuanji asked first. Everyone fought to answer first, which made him laugh. In these 3 years, Emperor Sword Court had lost some disciples, but it did not affect its foundation. It continued to develop steadily. After chatting with everyone for a while, Xian Xianghua called him to a place with no one else around. The two came to a forest. Xian Xianghua turned to look at him with a serious expression and said, "These days I have been dreaming of you. I dreamed of being devoured by countless blood bats." Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 399. Blood Bat. Zhou Xuanji asked in astonishment. He had already become a first-class great emperor. Who else in the mortal world could kill him? He immediately thought of the demonic emperor and Xiao Hongjun. Xian Xianghua sighed and said, "That's right. Blood-colored bat. Initially I thought I was too worried about you, which was why I had a dream. But later on the dream became more realistic. With our cultivation, how can we dream so easily? Great tribulation scattered immortals cultivated day and night. How could they have time to sleep?" Zhou Xuanji comforted her. "Don't overthink. I'm no longer the same as before. Do you still think I'm weak?" Xian Xianghua thought about it and realized that it was true. Many people said that this brat would surely die. But he did not. Moreover, he knew the celestial devil rebirth technique. He could be reborn after death. She smiled proudly, "Of course, with my celestial devil rebirth technique." Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, "It's because I'm powerful. Or else, how could I master the celestial devil rebirth technique so quickly?" The two began to bicker. Next, Emperor Sword Court began to reorganize itself. Zhou Xuanji gathered all the disciples and brainwashed them. All the disciples worked hard on their sword techniques as though they were injected with chicken blood. The other factions in the northern wilderness region also began to rebuild and recuperate. Zhou Xuanji's legend was still being spread. He was quickly deified. After Yang Di's departure, no one in the world could be compared to him. The Sword Emperor ruled the world. The era of the Sword's Way had arrived. Overseas. Boom. A mountain on an island was split in half. Dao Seeker fell into the rubble and was in a sorry state. Dust flew up and his face was covered in blood. He looked up. A red-haired lady in a white dress levitated in the air with a mocking smile. "Who are you?" Dao Seeker asked with gritted teeth. His heart was filled with shock. He was a tribulation executive. Mortals could not hurt him at all. How could this lady? "Remember, my name is Xiao Hongjun. From today onwards you will serve me, tribulation executive." The red-haired lady smiled arrogantly. Although she was beautiful, she gave off a terrifying vibe. Xiao Hongjun. Dao Seeker's pupils contracted. He swallowed his saliva and got up with much difficulty. "Why did you come to the northern wilderness region? Was it the Heavenly Hall's will?" Xiao Hongjun heard him and laughed disdainfully. "Heavenly Hall is nothing. When I broke into the heavenly hall back then, who could stop me other than Sei Jutian? Qiu Dao was not surprised. Instead, he became even more terrified. In other words, the heavenly palace was not the only enemy of the northern wilderness region. Xiao Hongjun stared at Dao Seeker and asked, "Do you know where the tomb of great Emperor Wuwang is?" Emperor Wuwang. Dao Seeker frowned. He instantly thought of many things. At this moment, an invisible force lifted him up and brought him before Xiao Hongjun. "Tell me the truth or I will kill you," Xiao Hongjun threatened. Countless blood bats emerged from her back and surrounded Qiu Dao. Dao Seeker sighed and asked, "Great Emperor Wuwang has been dead for 110,000 years. Where can we find his tomb? Even if there is one, it would have been dug out long ago." Xiao Hongjun frowned, and a murderous aura appeared between her brows. Where did that Zhou Xuanji come from? She changed the topic and asked. She had observed the battle at Juedi Cliff through her spell when she was overseas, and it left a deep impression on her. Such a prodigy should not exist in the mortal world. She suspected that Zhou Xuanji had obtained great Emperor Wuwang's legacy, or else how could he be so powerful? Moreover, she knew that the current northern wilderness humans could not become great emperors. Dao Seeker's heart trembled. He did not want anything to happen to Zhou Xuanji. But facing Xiao Hongjuan's powerful might, he could not resist. Zhou Xuanji has no background. His fate was changed when he was young, so it's impossible to predict his fate. Dao Seeker replied, hoping to dispel Xiao Hongjuan's thoughts about Zhou Xuanji. Xiao Hongjun narrowed her eyes and laughed coldly. "I will give you time. You must find great Emperor Wuwang's tomb. Also, the Heavenly Hall's genius, Ji Xian, has already reincarnated. His name is Su Han, and he's at the coastal area in the east of the northern wilderness region. Draw him over to your side. After that, bring him to me with information about him and great Emperor Wuwang's tomb. Within 3 years, if you can't do it, I will kill you. Not only you, but I will slaughter the entire northern wilderness human race. After that, the human ancestors will probably thank me. You should understand." Dao Seeker was covered in cold sweat and could only agree. He was extremely afraid of Xiao Hongjun. It was his first time encountering someone who could hurt him. Tribulation executives did not have physical bodies in the northern wilderness region, and ordinary objects could not invade them. But when Xiao Hongjun attacked him, she could solidify his physical body. He shuddered at the thought of it. After that, Dao Seeker left pathetically. Xiao Hongjun stood among the swarm of blood bats and began thinking. The demonic emperor's son, the violet demon monarch's heart, Ji Xian. Interesting. I did not expect 3 matchless fates to gather in the same mortal realm, and in the same era. She mumbled to herself with a smile that was bewitchingly beautiful. The heavenly hall. Sei Jutian sat on the throne with a deep frown. Everyone below him was silent. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the legs of those standing at the back were trembling. Some of them could not bear the pressure. When Sei Jutian was enraged, a powerful aura would wreak havoc. Those with weak cultivation could not bear it. Your Majesty, Shenyuan Shenhao is the top genius of the heavenly hall. He will not fail. A muscular man stood up and said. He was the clan leader of the Shenyuan clan, Shenyuan Zhengzun. His face was solemn, but his heart was filled with guilt. If Shenyuan Shenhao really failed in the mortal realm, it would be a great humiliation. This brat was so confident just now. What if he really fails? Sei Jutian asked with squinted eyes. He had invested too many resources and expectations on Shenyuan Shenhao. He could not allow Shenyuan Shenhao to fail. Shenyuan Zhengzun wanted to say something but hesitated. Eventually he chose to keep his mouth shut. As a second-class great emperor, he cannot dominate the mortal realm. What a joke. Your Majesty, it seems like you cannot indulge the geniuses of the Shenyuan clan anymore. A white-bearded old man stood up and said. He wore a long white robe and had an extraordinary demeanor. Shenyuan Zhengzun's face darkened in anger. Sei Jutian snorted coldly and did not speak anymore. The atmosphere in the palace fell into silence again. Late at night, on the peak of Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji sat by the cliff and cultivated. Even though he had already become a great emperor, he did not slack off. After becoming a great emperor, his cultivation grew tremendously. Compared to before, he progressed at a tremendous pace. However, the amount of spiritual qi required for each stage of heavenly law great emperor was much more than before. Zhou Xuanji, come and meet me. A voice sounded out in Zhou Xuanji's mind, and he opened his eyes in shock. He frowned and scanned with his divine sense. Soon he locked onto the other party. It was 250 miles away. Under the moonlight, a blue-robed man stood on the cliff and looked up at the bright moon. It was none other than Sei Jutian. He appeared in the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji appeared behind Sei Jutian and asked with a deep voice, "Who are you?" He could not see through this person. Impossible. He was already invincible in the mortal realm and was a first-class great emperor. There was only one possibility. This person did not belong to the mortal realm. Sei Jutian turned around and looked at him expressionlessly. "I am the Lord of the Heavenly Hall, Sei Jutian. I control a dozen mortal realms and am immortal. Do you know your crime?" Baidu read the latest chapter of I Have Countless Legendary Sword Claw Book House for free. Chapter 400. The Master of the Heavenly Palace, Sei Jutian. Zhou Xuanji looked at him calmly and asked, "What crime?" If Sei Jutian wanted to kill him or could kill him, he would have done so a long time ago. Their eyes met. He was calm and composed without the slightest fear. Sei Jutian narrowed his eyes and said, "You obstructed the will of heaven, are you not guilty?" Zhou Xuanji smiled. "I have your mother's sins." He said bluntly, "Xianyuan Zhou forced me to become Tian. I was unwilling, so he wanted to kill me. Can't I resist? Your heavenly palace slaughtered the human race. What do you have to say about that?" He did not have a good impression of the Sky Palace. He even wanted to start a war. However, considering that the northern wilderness region was still recovering and could not afford to fight a war, he could only suppress his anger for now. Sei Jutian shook his head and said, "If it wasn't for me, the northern wilderness humans would have been wiped out long ago. This time I couldn't protect them, so I sent the Xianyuan clan to wipe them out. You've already become a great emperor, so you can escape this calamity and enter the heavenly hall. I'll nurture you. What do you think?" Zhou Xuanji frowned. This turn of events made him fall into silence. No wonder the ancestors of the human clan wanted to exterminate the human clan of the northern wilderness so much, but they did not do so. So it was because the heavenly palace was resisting? He did not feel grateful because the heavenly palace had already massacred two great empires. Next, they were going to massacre the entire human race. Emperor Sword Court would also encounter a calamity. "If I agree, can you protect the northern wilderness region?" Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not want to join the heavenly hall and was just testing the waters. Sei Jutian waved his hand domineeringly and said, "No, apart from you, everyone else must die." He didn't lie because he was the master of the heavenly palace, and he needed his subordinates to obey him. Zhou Xuanji smiled. People of different paths cannot make plans together. Sei Jutian didn't get angry. His gaze was calm as he stared at him and said, "If you aren't willing to enter heavenly hall and ascend, you will die. It isn't that I want to kill you, but there are too many experts pressuring me from behind. Marquis should have already told you the truth." This guy actually knew about the Marquis. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt pressured. Could it be that those ancestors were watching him from the upper realm? Sei Jutian saw through his thoughts and said, "That's not the case. I can't enter the mortal world and can't pry into it unless my cultivation surpasses that of a true deity." True God? Was it his status or his realm? Zhou Xuanji had heard of this term before, but he did not have the chance to know the answer. He did not ask. Instead, he was thinking about how many almighties wanted the northern wilderness humans dead. Very soon an army from the upper realms will descend. The heavenly palace will not be merciful. You will regret it. Although you have become a great emperor, you are still too young. After saying this, Sei Jutian left. He admired Zhou Xuanji's talent, which was why he came down to recruit him. Since they couldn't come to an agreement, then so be it. Zhou Xuanji looked at the bright moon and did not immediately return to Skyfall. He thought for a long time. In the end he sighed. It's still not enough. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed since Spirit Sovereign Yan's death. The northern wilderness region had recovered quite a bit, and the number of war-torn areas within the human race had been greatly reduced. However, because the southern Han royal city and the great Shang Empire had been destroyed, they had become places where bandits roamed. On this day, Zhou Xuanji was teaching Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Tsongjian, Lin Changge, Qin Bantian, Ning Zifeng, Meng Tianlang, and Beixiao Wangjian. Everyone sat cross-legged together, exchanging their understanding of the sword Dao. Zhou Xuanji listened most of the time and gave some pointers occasionally. His pointers were always accurate and enlightening the others. First-class great emperor, seventh tribulation scattered immortal. His understanding of the sword Dao was far beyond that of Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Tsongjian, and the others. After their conversation, Zhou Xuanji told them about his encounter with the Heavenly Hall, the demonic emperor Wang Ho and Xiao Hongjun. These trusted aides were already the mainstays of Emperor Sword Court and could rule over a region. Zhou Xuanji was nurturing them to train their courage and knowledge. After he finished speaking, everyone fell into silence. A long while later, Beixiao Wangjian asked, Xiao Jinghong, what's your relationship with Xiao Hongjun? Their names are so similar. Xiao Jinghong was speechless and stared at him. Ning Zifeng muttered, if so, even if we destroy the Heavenly Hall, it won't be a good thing. We might be faced with a catastrophe. The Northern Wilderness humans could even destroy the Heavenly Hall. How could those powerhouses be at ease? Yeah, but we're not afraid. Master, don't be afraid. These ancestors are really ungrateful. Forget about the ancestors before Lu Wuji. What's the meaning of the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way? Especially the Hegemon Sword Emperor. He's so disgusting. I will never respect him as an ancestor again. The group began discussing among themselves. Lin Chang'e was the most indignant one. Zhou Xuanji said, there will be a lot of trouble in the future. I don't want you to just talk about Emperor Sword Court's purpose. Cultivate well, strengthen Emperor Sword Court, and protect the Northern Wilderness region. Okay. Of course. Zhao Congjian patted his chest and said. The others followed suit, each more righteous than the last. Zhou Xuanji was very satisfied. After that, he ordered to continue recruiting disciples. This matter was handled by Xiao Jinghong, Lin Chang'e, and the other elders. The next day, the news of Emperor Sword Court recruiting disciples spread to the human race. After Zhou Xuanji gave the order, he no longer paid attention to it and began to focus on cultivation. Occasionally he taught Zhou Xiaoxian. Zhou Xiaoxian had already grown up. She was youthful and talented. Her cultivation had already reached inner pellet level 6. Among the second-generation disciples, she was the eldest. The eldest senior brother of the second generation, Su Yang, was her #1 follower. As Zhou Xuanji's daughter, no male disciple in Emperor Sword Court dared to touch her. Not to mention that Zhou Xuanji was not around, Jiang Shui, Huang Lianxin, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were around. Who would dare to court death? Even if they accidentally touched Zhou Xiaoxuan's shoulder, the male disciples would be in fear. Although Zhou Xiaoxian was a young girl, Zhou Xuanji's influence on her was too great. Unless there was a man more powerful than Zhou Xuanji, she would not be moved. She only wanted to become more powerful. Regarding this, Zhou Xuanji suspected that she was influenced by Xian Xianghua. She was too eager to be powerful. Don't be like Long Proud Hua, who was single for 10,000 years. This day, Emperor Sword Court began recruiting disciples. The entire Skyfall was bustling. Zhou Xuanji, come out and fight. I'm Shenyuan Shenhao, the great emperor of the upper realm. If you lose today's battle, return to the Heavenly Hall with me. A loud cry resounded across the sky, and countless people looked up in shock. Shenyuan Shenhao, who looked like a god of war, appeared in the sky. Millions of people were in an uproar. The great emperor of the upper realm? The Heavenly Hall came so soon? The Sword Emperor cannot be defeated. This person is seeking his own death. Bulsh *T Great Emperor. How come I've never heard of the name Shenyuan Shenhao? Most people snorted disdainfully. After the tribulation of Spirit Sovereign Yen, Zhou Xuanji was invincible in the eyes of the Northern Wilderness. Even if the Heavenly Hall came, they would not be able to defeat the Sword Emperor. Shenyuan Shenhao stood proudly. But when he heard the discussions below, his mouth twitched and veins popped on his forehead. He was in an extremely bad mood. A bunch of mortals. If not for the fact that this was Zhou Xuanji's territory, he would not allow these mortals to make noise. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 401. Shenyuan Shenhao, if you lose you'll have to become my sword slave. Do you dare? Zhou Xuanji's voice sounded out from Skyfall, and millions of people cheered. With the Sword Emperor present, whether it was Emperor Sword Court's disciples or the cultivators who had come to pay their respects, they all felt a sense of security and did not fear Shenyuan Shenhao. Shenyuan Shenhao was so angry that his expression became dark. He would rather die than become Zhou Xuanji's disciple. He shouted angrily, "Cut the crap and come out." A malevolent and mighty halberd appeared in his left hand, and an exaggeratedly long blade appeared in his right hand. With a halberd and a blade, his aura erupted, silencing the heavens and earth. Everyone stared at him, dumbfounded. What a terrifying pressure. Shenyuan Shenhao controlled himself very well, or else just the might alone would be enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people. He did not do this, after all he owed Zhou Xuanji his life. At this moment, a figure stepped out from the sea of clouds. It was Zhou Xuanji. He wore black clothes and his black hair casually scattered down his back. His face was like jade and his eyebrows were sharp like swords. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing an incomparably confident smile. He didn't fear Xinyuan Shenhao at all. He stared at Xinyuan Shenhao and said with a smile, "Is half a year enough for you to make up for the gap between us?" Xinyuan Shenhao frowned, the anger in his heart rising once more. If they were in the upper realm, even 100 Zhou Xuanjis would not be a match for him. This child was too savage. He immediately raised his divine weapon and walked towards Zhou Xuanji. The millions of people on Skyfall held their breaths and watched nervously. Zhou Xuanji raised his right hand and the true Lord Xianxing sword appeared in his hand. He stared at Xinyuan Shenhao, his gaze becoming sharp. "Father, defeat him." Zhou Shaoxian stood on the cliff and shouted. Just when she finished speaking, Zhou Xuanji moved suddenly. Xinyuan Shenhao's pupils shrank. What incredible speed! Just as he was about to make a move, a terrifying pressure enveloped him, causing him to be unable to move. What's going on? Emperor's might? Impossible. Xinyuan Shenhao revealed a look of horror. Waves surged in his heart. Puchi. True Lord Xianxing's sword pierced through his throat and blood flowed out from the back of his neck. Zhou Xuanji stood in front of him with a cold expression. "You have lost." Xinyuan Shenhao's eyes widened and beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and his body slightly trembled. All the spectators were stunned. He had thought that it would be a fierce battle. He didn't expect it to be an instant kill. The Sword Emperor was ridiculously strong. Thunder clouds rolled and countless bolts of lightning interweaved. A stone tablet that was thousands of feet tall stood in the middle of the thunder clouds. Many names were engraved on it, and from the bottom to the top, the characters grew larger and larger. The stone tablet shook violently as if it would shatter at any moment. Two black-robed men stood in front of the stone monument, looking up. A new name will appear on the great Emperor's stele. I wonder what this person's ranking is. The two of them conversed softly. At the top of the All Heaven's great Emperor's stele, the top 100 names were arranged in a row. The stone tablet suddenly stopped shaking. The 12th name suddenly dropped, causing all the names below it to drop as well. Then a new name appeared in the 12th place. Zhou Xuanji. The two black-robed men were frightened and cried out in alarm. Number 12. First grade Great Sovereign. Even the peerless Hegemon Sword Emperor 10,000 years ago was only number 53. Where did this person come from? The two of them could no longer remain calm. They cast their spells and spread the news. The All Heaven's Great Emperor stele was a manifestation of the heavenly law. It recorded the talent rankings of all living beings. The names on the stele were all great emperors. The top 30 were all first-grade great emperors. Xinyuan Shenhao was ranked 54, just below the Hegemon Sword Emperor. It had been 50,000 years since a first-grade great sovereign was born. On the peak of Skyfall. Ever since he defeated Xinyuan Shenhao, Zhou Xuanji forced him to stay to accompany Hao Yinsect's Thunder Demon sovereign Zhang Quanglan. On this day Zhou Xuanji celebrated his 78th birthday while cultivating. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 78 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained Gold, Brilliant Soul Sword, God Slaying, 9 Flame Chimera Demon Sword. He opened his eyes abruptly, and a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. God Slaying Legendary Sword. They were finally out. The information of the two legendary swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Brilliant Soul Sword grade, Gold description, a brilliant light that can suppress ghosts. A magnificent sword, a swordsman's favorite. Sword name, 9 Flame Chimera Demon Sword grade, God Slaying description. The 9 Flame Chimera Demon is an ancient giant demon that contains 9 types of intense flames. It is extremely domineering and invincible. Its soul is transformed into a demon sword, and only great emperors can wield it. Only great emperors can wield it? Zhou Xuanji was delighted. He was now a first-class great emperor. Didn't that mean he could wield it directly? He immediately took out the 9 Flame Chimera Demon Sword. In that instant, a fiery light shone on his face, and his pupils dilated. It was a crimson flame long sword. The blade was 4 fingers wide and there were flame runes carved on its edges. The entire blade was burning with intense flames and had 3 colors. The bottom was white, the middle was red, and the outside was crimson. The hilt was covered with scales, and holding it he could feel a cool sensation. Kill. 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 A low roar sounded in Zhou Xuanji's ears, shaking his mind. He immediately stored the sword in the supreme storage. Such a domineering god-slaying legendary sword. Holding this sword, Zhou Xuanji felt an intense desire to destroy, as though everything in the world could not withstand a single blow. Fortunately, with the suppression of the supreme legendary sword system, this desire to destroy would not devour Zhou Xuanji's heart. Very good. With this sword, I will kill as many as the heavenly palace comes. Zhou Xuanji smiled in satisfaction. However, other than the heavenly palace, he had many more enemies. He still had to work hard on his cultivation. At this moment, Liuwu Demon Wolf's voice came from the foot of the mountain. Master, Great Shang's Emperor Yang Xindi has brought thousands of merchants to pay his respects. Should we accept them? Yang Xindi? Zhou Xuanji replied with squinted eyes, make the necessary arrangements. Do not be negligent. Yes. After Liuwu Demon Wolf left, Zhou Xuanji fell into reminiscence. Yang Xindi recognized him before he ruled the world, and the two of them were old friends. It was a pity that Great Shang was already destroyed. He suddenly thought of Great Shang's top beauty, Su Xianxian. He wondered how she was doing. He did not feel sad and continued to cultivate. 3 days later he met with Yang Xindi and the others. The collapse of the empire caused Yang Xindi and Yang Zhongtian to become much older. After some discussion, they officially joined Emperor Sword Court. Yang Zhongtian's strategy was unparalleled, and he was famous among the 7 great empires. He was just like Guojia and Jiasu in the 3 kingdoms in his previous life. Daoya old man admired him very much, so he personally made arrangements for him. Yang Xindi was once the son of heaven and could help Emperor Sword Court develop. However, Emperor Sword Court was a sect of the Way of the Sword. If they did not have outstanding Way of the Sword cultivation, it would be hard for them to convince the masses. Time passed. Half a month passed. Dao Seeker suddenly looked for Zhou Xuanji, and the two of them came to a place where there was no one around to talk. Zhou Xuanji noticed that he did not look well, as though he had just experienced a huge setback. Just as he was about to speak, the man in the woven rush raincoat appeared out of nowhere and spoke first. Something bad has happened. If you want to know what kind of godly swords there are, you can pay attention to it. There will be an update on the godly swords at 6 p.m. More story power rankings and Easter eggs can also be found in the WeChat. Come. Wonderful bookstore. Com. Chapter 402. Is your business more urgent than mine? Dao Seeker glared at the man in the raincoat and said angrily. He was not surprised at all why the man in the woven rush raincoat was looking for Zhou Xuanji. The man in the woven rush raincoat said angrily, aren't you just Xiao Hongjuan's matter? I have already informed the Sword Emperor. Dao Seeker ignored him and said to Zhou Xuanji hurriedly, Ji Xian has already reincarnated and turned into someone called Su Han. Xiao Hongjun forced me to look for him, but I could not find him. However, I discovered something. Ji Xian descended to the mortal realm under the orders of a powerhouse, and his goal was to exterminate the human race. Ji Xian is not simple. He is very famous in the upper worlds. Even Xiao Hongjun wants to subdue him. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Su Han? Why did he feel like he had heard this name before? Why do you know these people from the upper realm so well? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. He felt that these two were hiding many things from him. Dao Seeker explained, we are tribulation executives. No matter who descends to the mortal world, we will be able to sense it. Over the years, we have met many acquaintances who have descended to the mortal world. We have talked about Xiao Hongjun and Ji Xian. The man in the raincoat interrupted him. Ji Xian's reincarnation will take several hundred years for him to mature, so there's nothing to worry about. I've divined that the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline is related to you, because his fate is constantly changing and disappearing. In this world, only your fate cannot be divined. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and asked, you mean that the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline is by my side? It's very likely that he's from Emperor Sword Court? The man in the raincoat nodded. After learning of this possibility, he was also very shocked. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? However, now that Emperor Sword Court had become stronger, such a situation was indeed possible. Dao Seeker snorted coldly. The descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline needs time to rise. Moreover, how could he be a greater threat than Ji Xian? You should know who Ji Xian is. He is a first-class great sovereign with unparalleled talent. When Sei Juqian banished him to the mortal world, I already felt that something was wrong. So it was to deceive people. First grade great emperor? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He felt that Dao Seeker's words did not hold water. Was there a need for such a cover-up? Or did Sage Yuqian have a deeper plan? Dao Seeker and the man in the woven rush raincoat began arguing, which gave Zhou Xuanji a headache. Rumble, the sound of thunder suddenly rang out, startling the three of them. Rumbling thunder clouds gathered above Skyfall. Looking out, the sky was also filled with thunder clouds, covering tens of thousands of miles and perhaps even further. A terrifying heavenly might descended, causing everyone to tremble. Qiu Dao's expression changed and he said in shock, "Could it be, Heavenly Palace?" Zhou Xuanji looked at the sky, his gaze cold. The day had finally come. The Heavenly Palace would definitely not give him the time to grow after he became a grade 1 great sovereign. As expected, in less than a year the Heavenly Hall descended to the mortal world and started the war. At the foot of Skyfall, Xianyuan Xinhao, who was dressed in simple cloth clothes, looked up with a grave expression. Zhang Quanglan, who was chopping wood at the side, wiped the sweat off his forehead and said with a smile, "Brother Xinhao, stop looking. The court lord has probably made a breakthrough again. Follow me and chop wood properly. You'll find that this kind of life is quite interesting." Watching the grass grow in summer, watching the leaves fall in autumn, watching the snow fall in winter, watching all living things grow in spring. Isn't life like this? Living from death, going around in circles, fighting for a lifetime. Who can escape death? He smiled like an old man who had seen through the world of mortals and returned to his native land. Xianyuan Xinhao ignored him but stared at the billowing thunderclouds in the sky. "They're here?" he mumbled. He had stayed in Skyfall for some time and found this place quite interesting. Moreover, he had not defeated Zhou Xuanji yet, so he did not hope for the Heavenly Hall to descend. Because he knew that once the Heavenly Hall invaded, Zhou Xuanji and the Northern Wilderness humans would die for sure. Other than the Heavenly Hall, there would surely be powerful cultivators from other factions. "Zhou Xuanji, I'm the great commander of the Heavenly Hall, Li Min. I want to see what you can do to stop the Heavenly Hall." A loud cry resounded across the clouds. The thunderclouds on the horizon parted, and beams of golden light shone out. Many majestic figures appeared above the sea of clouds, all of them wearing shining divine armors, looking mighty and domineering. At a glance, there were countless soldiers from the Heavenly Hall. A gigantic figure that was thousands of meters tall appeared on the horizon like a giant that created the world. He held a gigantic sword in his hand that was even larger than the mountains beside him. His back was facing the blazing sun, making it so that no one could see his true appearance. Anyone who saw such a scene would be afraid. Gather the entire court. Formation. Su Yang drew his sword and roared with all his might. He was not afraid but excited instead. "I can finally show my power," Dao Seeker said with a solemn expression. "The real catastrophe is here." Zhou Xuanji walked past him and leaped into the air, ascending into the sky. The sun-devouring Tiango sword and dream-devouring heavenly martial devil rinsing appeared in his hands. The Emperor's Wei thousand-hand sword Buddha materialized and rose from the ground with Zhou Xuanji on its head. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, all the disciples of Emperor Sword Court were excited. After a new round of recruitment, Emperor Sword Court had more than 1.5 million people. Most of them were odd-job disciples. The Sword Emperor who transcends the past and present indeed. So domineering. Yang Zhongtian stood by the cliff and sighed in amazement as he stroked his long beard. Yang Xindi, who was beside him, was silent. His eyes were burning with passion. Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Xiao Jinghong, Meng Tianlang, Chen Bantian, Zhao Tsongjian, and the others drew their swords and landed on the thousand-hand sword Buddha's shoulder. Roar, a domineering dragon roar shook the heavens and the earth. Next, Finyu Dragon King coiled around Skyfall and rose into the sky. The dragon's body was like a mountain range, majestic and majestic. Zhou Xiaoqi turned into a fire qilin. His shoulders were 500 meters tall, and his hooves were covered in flames. He levitated behind Skyfall. The Heavenly Hall is seeking death. What should Emperor Sword Court do? Zhou Xuanji said. His voice reverberated across the heavens and earth. Although his tone was indifferent, it made all the disciples of Emperor Sword Court's blood boil. Kill with the sword. 1.5 million disciples drew their swords and roared furiously. Their voices gathered together, and it was so majestic that it shook the mountains and rivers. Sword Qi soared into the sky and dispersed the thunderclouds around Skyfall. Blocking a chariot with your bare hands. Xianyuan Xinhao shook his head and mumbled. He noticed that Zhang Guanglan was still laughing and said unpleasantly, "Trash, you are going to die soon. Why are you still laughing?" Zhang Guanglan waved his hand and continued chopping firewood with a smile. Xinyuan Shenhao was silent. "Zhou Xuanji, you are powerful indeed. But you are the only powerful person in the northern wilderness region. Can you protect everyone?" Divine General Li Min's voice came again. His tone was filled with mockery. "Millions of the Heavenly Hall's army have descended to every corner of the human race. Let's see how you will save the world with your sword." "Boys kill." Divine General Li Min roared furiously. A few thousand meters tall, he charged over from the horizon with his sword. He was unstoppable, destroying mountains and splashing lakes. "Kill." The Heavenly Hall's army roared as well. Like a torrential storm, they descended from the sky and charged toward Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly. Countless sword shadows appeared in the dark sky. There were so many that they were as numerous as the stars in the night sky. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 403. Millions of sword shadows levitated around the thousand-hand sword Buddha. The scene was extremely majestic, and everyone on Emperor Sword Court's side was in awe. What kind of mastery of the sword's way was required to cast such a sword technique? The sword shadows connected and gathered into mountains and rivers, forming a primordial chaos. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes, and the primordial chaos sword shadow charged toward the Heavenly Hall's army. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The millions of sword shadows moved in unison with great momentum. The powerful gale that they generated was about to sweep up the forest below. The Heavenly Hall's side was shocked too, but it was too late for them to retreat. Soon, the primordial chaos sword shadow charged into the Heavenly Hall's army. Explosions occurred one after another. The Heavenly Hall's soldiers were blasted into pieces by the sword shadows, and their souls dispersed. Powerful. Domineering. Emperor Sword Court's disciples' blood boiled. If not for the fact that they were in a battle, they would have knelt down to Zhou Xuanji immediately. Boom! Divine General Li Min charged over furiously, crushing the mountains along the way. He swung his giant sword and blocked the primordial chaos sword shadow, giving the Heavenly Hall's army a chance to breathe. They made a detour and charged toward Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji merged into the thousand-hand sword Buddha's body. Next, the thousand-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes, and two rays of golden radiance swept across the land. Facing the ferocious Divine General Li Min, the thousand-hand sword Buddha grew 1,000 arms and charged forward with its sword. The two peerless giants fought fiercely in the wilderness. The two forces clashed like two torrents and people died in an instant. The Heavenly Hall's power was restricted by the heavenly law. But overall they were still more powerful than Emperor Sword Court. Zhou Xuanji decided to end the battle quickly. He would kill Divine General Li Min first before destroying the Heavenly Hall's army. The thousand-hand sword Buddha came up to Divine General Li Min and slashed with its 1,000 swords, forcing Divine General Li Min to retreat. His power was restricted to ninth tribulation scattered immortal by the heavenly law. Although he could still dominate the world, he was at a disadvantage against Zhou Xuanji. How can it be? This guy's power. Divine General Li Min's majestic face darkened, and he was horrified in his heart. Zhou Xuanji drew on the power of the heavens and the earth, causing his power to explosively increase. At the same time he used universal attraction, sucking him in. An earth-shattering explosion resounded. Divine General Li Min's shoulders were slashed, and the terrifying force forced him to kneel on the ground. The ground cracked and dust flew into the air. The heavenly halls of the divine. However, the people from the heavenly palace were shocked. Impossible. General Li Min is at a disadvantage? Damn it, no wonder he's ranked 12th on the Great Emperor's stele. Everyone be careful. The northern wilderness humans must be eliminated. Let's fight. Although the heavenly palace's soldiers were frightened, they did not show any fear. Instead they erupted with even stronger willpower. The surrounding 10,000 miles had turned into a battlefield. The disciples of the Emperor Sword Court controlled their swords to fight, traversing the battlefield wantonly. Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng were very domineering. Both of them wielded the ancestral dragon divine sword and transformed into ancestral dragons. Qin Bantian and Meng Tianlang weren't any weaker. The 10,000-year princes were getting stronger as they fought, and their eyes were filled with excitement and madness. Xiao Jinghong activated the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Although it was only a few dozen meters tall and was not as exaggerated as Zhou Xuanji's thousand-hand sword Buddha, it was still powerful. No one could stop him. Zhou Xuanji suddenly deactivated the thousand-hand sword Buddha state, and 9 sword souls appeared behind him. The sword souls slashed out continuously. Li Min instinctively raised his sword to block, but it was useless. The sword light flashed and most people subconsciously closed their eyes. Li Min opened his eyes wide. His body was blasted apart and turned into countless sparks. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes, and the true Lord Xianxing sword appeared above his head. Swoosh! Ranged sword propelling. Li Min's soul was hidden among the sparks. He could not dodge in time and was penetrated by the true Lord Xianxing sword. How can it be? Li Min opened his eyes wide and looked at Zhou Xuanji in disbelief. He was defeated. And he lost so quickly. He still had many powerful divine abilities that he did not have time to use. Zhou Xuanji appeared in front of him out of nowhere. The 9-sword purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. Nothing is impossible. I'm more powerful than you, he said coldly. After he spoke, he absorbed Li Min's soul with the Tianxia map. He turned around and all the legendary swords appeared around him. More than 100 legendary swords were surrounded by dragon-shaped sword chi. 10,000 sword dragon incantation. Kill? He cried loudly. All the legendary swords dashed out with extreme speed and killed the Heavenly Palace's soldiers one after another. No one could stop them. His soul had already transformed, and his mental control was extremely powerful. None of the Emperor Sword Court's disciples were accidentally injured. Hundreds of swords shot out at the same time, and the sound of air being torn could be heard. When the divine sword pierced through the disciples of the Emperor Sword Court and killed the enemy, it moved on to the next enemy. All of them widened their eyes in shock. So fast. Meng Tianlang couldn't help but gulp as he looked at the godly swords that were flying in all directions. He was too strong. Even if the upper realm's heavenly hall descended, it would not stand a chance against Zhou Xuanji. Was becoming a great emperor really that amazing? His eyes burned with fighting spirit. Run. The commander is dead. We've lost. Impossible. How can he be so strong? Could it be that he is not restricted by the heavenly Tao? Why is this happening? With Li Min's death, the legendary swords wreaked havoc. The Heavenly Hall's army collapsed in an instant. All of them fled in a hurry, but Zhou Xuanji would not let them go. The massacre continued. At the same time, the Heavenly Hall's army arrived in various parts of the northern wilderness region. The divine generals and spiritual venerables led their troops and slaughtered the humans wantonly. Miserable screams filled the desolate North's land, and blood almost dyed the whole country red. Although Zhou Xuanji won, it would be difficult for him to protect the human world alone. All the sacred grounds and the 5 great dynasties took action. The flames of war spread across the world. Boom, boom. 2 beams of light descended from the sky and landed on the beach, splashing up the seawater. 2 domineering men walked out from the powerful beams of light. One of them wore a heavy and sinister-looking black armor. He had a pair of dragon horns in his black hair, and his face was covered in black scales. His eyes were green in color. The other man was dressed like a scholar. His blue robe danced in the wind and he looked handsome. He held a folding fan in his hand. The blue-robed scholar shook his head with a smile. I didn't expect Li Min to die so quickly. The Heavenly Hall is useless indeed. The black-scaled man said with a deep voice. He's a first-class Great Emperor ranked 12th on the Great Emperor's stele after all. From what they said, they were obviously not from the Heavenly Hall. Their words even seemed to belittle the Heavenly Hall. Qin Mahuai, the Divine Lord allowed you to maintain your cultivation at First Revolution Golden Immortal. Don't die. Within 3 days, I want you to bring Zhou Xuanji's head to me. The blue-robed scholar instructed as he looked toward the horizon. Qin Mahuai frowned and asked, It's not a problem to kill him. What are you going to do? The blue-robed scholar waved his fan and laughed coldly. I'm going to settle the score with an old friend. After that, he turned into a series of afterimages and dashed toward the horizon. Qin Mahuai thought about it for a while before he turned around and walked toward the northern wilderness region. He smiled cruelly and mumbled to himself, First-class Great Emperor? I haven't killed a first-class Great Emperor before. Zhou Xuanji, I will let you die a painful death. Come. Wonderful Book House. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.